And we're back, baby. Clash Royale League 2022 kicking off right now. It's going to be a banger. I'm Rich Slaton. Joining me, as always, my buddy Andrew Ghai and the two-time regional Clash Royale League champion, Joshua A.C. Sharon. This is it. This is the big one. We had all the preamble. We had the community events. We had that 20-win challenge, but now we have the top 128 in a cutthroat day of Clash Royale, trying to make that top 32 and keep their Helsinki World Finals dreams alive. Andrew, this is going to be a brutal day. How are we getting it done?
Yeah, good morning to you guys and good morning to the world for Clash Royale League. We are halfway through our World Finals Qualifiers. That's right, you were able to get that 20-win badge. You were able to make it through ladder from thousands just down to 128. Here we are, Stage 3, double elimination from 128 today. We move all the way down just to 32 for those next two stages of the Swiss bracket. And if you can't get your golden ticket by then, well, we still got the LCQ for that $1 million prize in Helsinki. And if you're just joining us, this is how the format has been going all season long. That's right, there it is, the 5 stages and the LCQ. Best of 3 dual mode moving forward using our incredible tournament hub. And as we just said, those top 10 players from these next phases will be joining the other 6 at World Finals. But first, they got to make it through this double elimination bracket. Rich, for some it's going to be easy today, others a lot more difficult.
Well, they say there are no such thing as second chances, Andrew, but in the double elimination, you get one. You get 1 second chance, and that's it. 2 lives to give, and as you said, if you stay in that upper bracket, the road is very quick. You just got to win 3 matches of Clash Royale to advance to our next weekend. Stay in the hunt for Helsinki, but if you take that L, you're not out yet. You drop down to the lower to the elimination bracket with only 1 more life to live, being on the chopping block the whole entire way. You gotta win out at that point and make the top 16. The top 16 players of the upper bracket advance to next weekend, as well as the top 16 from the lower bracket. And of course, making it through keeps you in the hunt for World Finals and in the hunt for that big top prize. Josh, we have got a lot of money on the line here in 2022.
That's right, $250,000. I love starting a sentence with $250,000. $250,000 goes to first. But, you know, this is only stage 3. We're not there yet. We're not at the Helsinki yet. We're still trying to battle for that money prize. 33rd, 34th are going to walk away with $3,000. And let's say you still, you just don't make it. You're there, but not yet. 35th through 40th are going to walk away with $1,000 in their pockets.
This is a crazy one, and of course, if you make it to World Finals, that's a guaranteed $20K in your pocket. Josh, this is a kind of a nutty day, right? In previous versions of CRL, you've had all these ups and downs through a season, whether it's in teams or in solos. Lots of chances to move your way in and out for World Finals. This is totally different. Today, we're going from 128 down to 32, and that's it. This is a elimination day. Talk to me about the stress level these players have going into today's competition.
Well, see, this is Clash Royale, and we have Clash Royale players, and all of them have huge egos, and that's why I love the community and everybody a part of it. And I'm not really that worried about players getting all that nervous. We're not at the live stage just yet. I think there's a lot of adrenaline, pushing through their veins. They just want to make it to the next stage. And so in terms of like just being nervous and, that is going to happen, but I think most of these players are just excited and they just want to play.
Well, they'll get their chance here very soon. Of course, we'll be bouncing around throughout this competition, seeing some featured matches from each and every round as they play through this double elimination bracket, and maybe some little dip-ins here and there to other matches. But Josh, you're going to get your chance to talk about these more later. We'll see you as we jump into some of our later rounds. Andrew, we've got our first round of matches today, and again, these players in the upper bracket, everyone wants to stay there. The road is so much easier if you keep on winning.
Yeah, and if you talk about some of those, maybe about 20 players that have that first round bye because of their placement in the seeding, and of course Surgical Goblin being our #1 seed has a first round bye. That's a lot shorter for them as well, right? That means they only have to win 2 matches unless they get sent down to that lower bracket, which is going to happen to someone that has that first round bye. And yeah, Surgical Goblin is a big name that I'm sure we'll be seeing some of his matches. It's a big surprise, the goated one coming back, dominating that ladder phase. But of course, we have our very very first matchup of the day between Codigo and Hosseil, which is a really, really exciting match. Two veterans in the game. Codigo's been around a bit longer. He's been streaming like crazy, but then Hosseil had that golden run last year at World Finals, finishing in 8th place. And you said it when we were even just doing our run through earlier, probably Rookie of the Year last season, and that's a great way to start our day of 128, my man.
Yeah, finishing top 8 in your breakout year is huge. And Hosseil is a guy who in the beginning of 2021 wasn't really a name. His big breakout was making it through the ESL Mobile Open in North America and winning that one. I believe he won both the spring and fall variations of that. So he won both splits for that ESL Mobile Open and then continued that success. And he's had a pretty good year so far this year. And of course, this is one of those things that's going to kind of define, I think, his 2022. But across from him, you mentioned the veteran. Codigo has seen it all. Codigo began in CRL Latin America with Cream Esports, moved with Cream Esports into CRL West, bounced around through other teams. This guy has played Clash Royale in all different phases. So this one thing we've seen is that he's always consistent. He's always a guy who is capable of making it to that top level, and I expect to see great things from him this weekend.
Yeah, consistency is huge when you talk about Codigo, and a lot of that is because of his streaming schedule. You know, when you're playing at that high of a level all the time in front of viewers, it really does help the nerves that AC was talking about earlier, which I think is a really fascinating point, because when you talk about 128 players today, there's probably roughly about 100 of them where every single match they play for the rest of 2022 while they're still in the qualifier will be the most important match of Clash Royale they've ever played. For other guys out there, we have former world champion, former world finalists, a lot of those players that have had a lot of experience, someone like Codigo who's been around for years and years. But I do think for a lot of these guys, this is the most important set, most important day, most important moment of their Clash Royale careers. And if they can just contain those nerves, I'll be really impressed. You asked before the show today, you're like, how many players you think will make it through of the 32 that we don't know, between the three of our brains that we don't know? And it feels like there's got to be at least a handful that will.
Well, most likely, especially now that we're working through the in-game mode of duels, does make things a bit more, weights them a bit more towards players that don't have as much experience, so we'll see if they're able to go ahead and capitalize on that moment. You mentioned world champions. Andrew, we have 4 world champions in today's bracket. Surgical Goblin, you mentioned earlier. Diego B, back in the mix from that Team Liquid Championship squad as well. But the most interesting one is that in the same part of the bracket, you have formerly of Team Queso, Ruben, and his former teammate and friend IMJP. And if IMJP wins his first round matchup, Ruben has a first round bye, we could see those two former world champion teammates play each other in the very second round.
And you love it because you know they've got to be friends. You know they've got a good brotherhood at this point, but there's probably just a little bit of that sibling rivalry going on because so many people talked about how Ruben just put Queso on his back and carried him all the way through that 2020 World Finals to the gold. But IMJP showed up when he really needed to all season long back in 2020. So this could be a lot of fun. I won't call it bad blood. I will call it a sibling rivalry. That'd be a great way for our broadcast to go for the second round or the second matchup of the day. And when you talk about Hosseil and Codigo and IMJP and Ruben at this point, because it has been, it's hard to say so long since Ruben was considered the unanimous consensus #1 player in the world, but it has been a couple years. It feels like these two matchups, because both Hosseil and Codigo are in CMG, and then Ruben and JP, both obviously part of Team Queso, we're going to have a lot of friendly rivalries going on between a lot of competitors that are probably pretty evenly matched at this point.
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to match Ruben and JP, who lived in the same house together, versus Hosseil and Codigo. You know, you have Colombia, you have Mexico, but you are going to have a lot of people who've definitely trained together. I think one of the big things is people who know each other, right? You'll see a lot of players on ladder who might make, let's call it, ill-advised decisions if you're playing a random matchup, right? You're playing Royal Hogs, and they open Royal Hogs at the bridge first play. Well, it's because they see the player against them, and they know, oh, that's a Golem player. I'm going to go ahead and push in. I know what deck they're playing, right? So you might see some of that sort of stuff here when players who really know each other well. But the big, I think, X factor here, Andrew, is that while they might have played someone 1,000 times on ladder and they know what their go-to ladder deck is, this is duel mode, which totally changes the math on how you might know someone previously and how you might play against them today.
Yeah, and if you guys have been watching any of the big players out there in the world that have been kind enough to make content or live stream the previous stages, the Tournament Hub is just a little bit different. The dual mode in the Tournament Hub is basically 4 pre-submitted decks that you have to kind of decide between, and I think that makes analyzing a lot more difficult when you start your best of 3, but obviously as you're working your way through the best of 3, it's only one of 3 other decks, then one of 2 other decks that you can choose from, other than obviously when you start with the 4 available options. So talking about a lot of players, Rich, that know each other and work together, it's been a lot of fun for me to go through my friends list of some of the pros out there in the world, and you see how many of them are just practicing this dual mode and working through it. They're not doing friendly one-on-ones like you see a lot of the time. They're doing friendly dual mode to practice exactly what I was just talking about, which is building these decks and working their way through it and figuring out how to game against their opponent. And, you know, speaking of, if you guys haven't checked out our latest episode of 3 Crowns, Joshua, AC, Sharon kind of broke down at the mentality of building a dual mode deck, which was actually your idea when we were in our producers meeting, and I thought it was really cool because, you know, you and I and Josh, we can always speculate on what they should do next and how they should do it, but I know at least for you and me, we've never been put in that Tournament Hub dual mode situation where we actually get to build the decks and work through a set.
Yeah, it's a totally different ballgame, and for those of you watching at home who are like, Rich, Andrew, what the heck is dual mode? Dual mode has been the primary competitive format for the last couple of years, since 2021. In dual mode, you may not repeat cards within a best-of-3 matchup. So if you play 2.6 Hog Cycle in game number 1, don't know why you're doing that, but if you do, if you play 2.6 in game number 1, that means for the remaining up to 2 more games, no Hog, no Log, no Muskie, no Cannon, etc., you may not repeat cards, so you have to play 24 unique cards over the course of a 3-game match, or 16 if it's only 2 games. So that does make deck building a bit more challenging.
I was just going to say, it's so funny that we didn't really cover that at the top of the show because dual mode is so much the true format, and while we have had a lot of community events that have played with different styles of dual mode, for instance Royale Masters, where you could repeat decks if you lost with it and you couldn't if you won, but yeah, that little bit of housekeeping, I do believe that dual mode has been maybe the greatest thing that's been brought into the competitive scene. I think a lot of the pro players out there, they love that they're now best of 3s, they love that there's that extra level of gamesmanship, and it sounds like from our producers we're getting word we're going to be hopping into a game very soon. Obviously, using the Tournament Hub, it's the first time for a lot of the players, it's the first time for a lot of broadcasts, so we will be hopping in very, very shortly to our first matchup of the day. And of course, you guys can follow along with a lot of the action in your Tournament Hub in your app. You guys can just go click on that Tournament Hub icon, go over to brackets, go over to groups, and while they won't be updating as quickly as we are here, there it is, as quickly as it is here live on broadcast, it will be getting updated throughout the day. There it is. Rich has got it.
That button right there.
That button.
So you hit the CRL logo. You see that circle with the face? You go ahead and, did I hit it? Oh, I hit it. I did it first try. I did it first try. Let's go. And there you go. Now you're in the Tournament Hub. You can go ahead and find all your stuff. You can go to competition, which is that second piece right there, and all your information will load up. You can go see all the brackets, etc., etc. Oh, it's pretty. Oh, it's pretty. Go get in there and get your Tournament Hub. Do you like how the autofocus? That was nice.
I was going to say, yeah, you're showing off, you're flexing on our camera here. And I do love that the Tournament Hub is there because, you know, as you know from casting so many tournaments online, exclamation point bracket in the chat. Where's the bracket? How can I see the bracket? Where's the link to the bracket? Well, now you know, moving through the rest of the season, through the rest of all of CRL, the bracket is always right there in the Tournament Hub. And we're going to be back to back broadcasts basically throughout the rest of the season as we move through these next few stages and through the LCQ and of course World Finals. It's all going to be on broadcast. You guys aren't going to miss any of it anymore. We're going to be here with you guys the rest of the way, and we are hopping in to game number 2. Actually, technically, if you look, Codigo looks like he was able to take game number 1, and or excuse me, Hosseil. There we go. Hosseil top of your screen. Codigo at the bottom, and looks like Cody is already in an uphill battle here, Rich.
Yeah, most certainly. I mean, up against Hog EQ, an interesting variation here in the Inferno Tower. Going to make things a bit more difficult, of course, for that Ram Rider deck. And nice damage on the left-hand lane so far. So halfway through game number 2. Again, we are joining this one a little bit late with Hosseil having won game number 1. Not sure what he played. Maybe we'll get a chance to look at that in between games here. But right now, good spot for the young player out of Mexico.
Yeah, and you see here, not having the lightning in that Ram Rider deck is going to make getting through that Inferno Tower a lot more difficult. But the nice thing for Hosseil is he does have a lot of great ways to stop, slow, stun this Hog Rider. And there you go. There's one of the best ones in the Ram Rider, coupled with that Inferno Dragon. No Hog Rider touches.
Yeah, nice shutdown there by Codigo. It's interesting, right? You talk about not having the Fireball. Not only does it make it more difficult for that Inferno Tower, but Archer Queen on the board. So now you have to actually contend with her every single time, as opposed to just wiping her off with that lightning, getting the value. I'm very curious to see how this Golden Knight versus Archer Queen battle shapes out. You see, of course, Archer Queen with that timing, easy to take care of business, and now nice push to the right-hand lane.
And Ram Rider coming in, going to get a nice fireball there from Hosseil, hitting both of those guys there. And I apologize, it looks like Codigo did win game number 1 because he is on the top of the screen, even though the graphics on the right might be confusing. Got it. Because I was looking at the name and then I saw the red, so a bit of apologies there from here. Codigo is up 1, excuse us, over Hosseil. And it is Codigo who is playing the Hog Rider deck.
There we go. Yeah, we'll get it sorted out. Don't you worry. Mega Knight gonna go ahead and get in deep, and the veteran, as my co-caster pointed out, currently in a great spot. A little bit of danger right here. Mega Knight is going to work on that Archer Queen, but really right now the hard part for Hosseil is just trying to break through. He has to find a way to stack heavy, and has not gotten it done yet, but of course we are 30 seconds away from triple elixir.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what Hosseil does with defenses here, and we see a late fireball, which is not the way he wants to go. Hog Rider still gets a couple touches. There's a King Tower activation there. And I was thinking if he's going to underspend defensively, then maybe he can get an MK down on the board. But it looks like he's just throwing in the towel here in game number 2. Just frustrated, not able to break on through, not able to stop those hog hits, can't keep up with the cycle. And that is a great 2-0 start to the day for Codigo. I mean, we only saw a little bit of the action there, but from what we saw, Codigo looked exactly like you called him at the top of the day, Rich, which was incredibly consistent.
Yeah, I mean, that's the truth for Codigo. Now, of course, I don't know how many people are going to be in Hosseil's position and win that matchup, and joining it late, it's hard to tell what happens cycle-wise, but when your only real response to a Hog Rider in your deck is the Mega Knight, we saw him defending Ram Rider plus damage a whole lot, and it worked effectively a couple of times, but there were a number of times where we saw him without Ram Rider and without Mega Knight in response to that Hog Rider, but after playing Mega Knight's high, that 7 elixir high near the bridge, not playing defense on the front end of things, it feels like more than anything Hosseil got out of sorts from the cycle perspective.
It's also just so hard to deal with that Inferno Tower. That's going to be the biggest equalizer in taking care of that Mega Knight and, of course, keeping the Ram Rider at bay. You only have Fireball. The Zap would have been nice to reset, but it's just tough because you talk about trying to build that overwhelming push while still being able to defend, and Codigo did exactly what you have to do as a Hog Rider player. You have to be happy to trade lanes. You have to be happy to, you know, switch it on a dime to get that damage in to make sure your opponent can't overspend. And for a lot of you guys out there in the 5-6Ks of the world, when you run into Mega Knight and you're struggling, keep up that pressure opposite lane. If you don't know how to defend it or you don't think he can, keep that pressure up as you saw Codigo do, and that's a great way to start his run today. 2-0 already. Yes, he did have to play in the first group, which means he has to win 2 more sets today if he wants to be in that top 16 from the upper bracket, or 3 more matches technically if he wants to be in the top 16 from the lower bracket. Rich, not a great start for Hosseil.
No, definitely not the best, and I am going back to look at what was played in game number 1, as we did come to that one late. In game number 1, interesting is that Hosseil played the same deck that we saw Codigo play in game number 2, down to a T, the exact same Hog Cycle deck, and in that game, Codigo was playing Mortar double Miner, Mighty Miner with Classic Miner, and you can see between the Mortar and the Snowball and the guards, decent responses there. It's interesting, Hosseil maybe getting caught out there a little bit from a cycler perspective as well. Either way, it was Codigo able to take 2 games. I was curious to see if Lightning had been played in game number 1 by Hosseil, and that's why Codigo went with that matchup, but no, not the case. Either way, Codigo 2-0 and moves only 2 matches away from our next round.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at that matchup, you know, when you talk about all the responses in the mortar, in the snowball, in the guards, of course, the Mighty Miner in there as well to help that cycle out. It's one of those things where when you're playing against that deck, that specific mortar deck, when that Mighty Miner's down, that 3-card cycle is so tough to keep up with. There's so many great ways to stop the hog pushes, and of course, getting numerous miners on tower, the snowball to create space, and also it's a great way to start your set, because I think playing miner control is always great. Miner poison is really strong in the meta right now. It's a great way to control, and also Mighty Miner, not the most popular champion of the 4. Snowball, not the most popular spell out there, so I really love when you look at what Codigo did in game number 1 to kind of set him up for success as he moved throughout the set, because it does feel like Fireball is a card that you probably won't be seeing used a whole lot in game number 1, just because it can be so effective in games 2 and 3. And if you don't have it there, you can be in a lot of trouble, Rich. I know you've probably seen it. Mother Witch is everywhere. Flying Machine is everywhere once again. And Magic Archer is really firmly back in the meta.
Very much indeed. And a couple updates as we're waiting to jump into a potential pick up another second match here in our first round. Of course, Surgical Goblin, as mentioned earlier, had a first round bye. He's awaiting the winner of the other matchup. Trainer Toby taking out Betfus in round number 1. So Betfus will drop down into our lower bracket. Good one to note. Morton does have a first round bye. He's awaiting the winner of Leo Vargas versus X Pedro. Hajime has moved on to round number 2. Titan dropping to Pram, and this is all in our Group A matchups. But right now, we're going to jump into a pretty fun matchup here.
Yeah.
Let's go and jump in. Coco, and someone who kind of shocked the world last year, and then I would say has proven he belongs where he is right now.
Definitely.
Ta. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this matchup here in just a moment.
Yeah, Ta was a really interesting person to talk about last season, because, you know, he came out and he won that monthly qualifier, and then he just kind of disappeared for the rest of the season. And actually, we're just getting word now that that match is over,
Yep.
and even though we're not going to be able to see it, we can at least tell you the results. So I'm going to refresh here, and it looks like between Coca, RX, and Ta, oh no, they just haven't started yet, so they're just taking their sweet time. And again, a lot of people trying to figure out what's going on with the tournament hub and getting their game sorted. But the good news is, you talked about at the top of the day, Rich, Ruben and IMJP are going to face off in round number 2. Hopefully we'll be able to catch that matchup, because that is going to be a big-time fun one. Other big names that made it on through at the bottom of Group 3, since that's where we're at. Capgun and Adriel have made it through. They're going to be facing off against each other in round 2. And then Z is going to be facing off against Boss from the United States. So Boss, one of the biggest content creators out there, one of the bigger streamers out there in the world, is still alive. And it does look like another big streamer out in the world, Yosoi Rick, lost his first matchup of the day, so he will move down to that lower bracket. No one is eliminated yet. That is the sweetest thing about round number 1, is no one has been eliminated yet. We're going to bring back AC as we are figuring out round number 2. Josh, we didn't see a whole lot of action go on. Is there anything that stood out to you between Hosseil and Codigo, or any of the matches that you were looking at on our 4 brackets?
One of the things that I did see in the other brackets, it was Viper against Surge TS, and it was a clean 2-0 victory for Surge TS. And
Wow.
I was actually able to catch a little bit of the gameplay. I had, you know, my quadruple screen monitor, my phone, everything going on. And so I was able to catch some of the game, and Surge TS just played really, really well. I mean, it's what I expect from him, but it's always just a great sight to see him playing well.
Yeah, Surge
You know, I
TS. Oh, go ahead, Rich.
I was going to say, I just realized that I have some of these guys on my friends list, so I can keep some of these games up on a second screen too. What a brilliant idea, Josh.
You can just hold your phone up right now on the broadcast, and we can watch it that way. Yeah, Surge TS was one of those guys we weren't sure if it was going to be in the competition at all. He wasn't originally in that top 128, but obviously with the way that things move around, with people being able to qualify or not, or be at World Finals, Surge TS able to make it in. Asaf, another big name, was able to make it in. Those are 2 of the bigger names out in the world, and Jupiter King. All 3 of them were kind of, I'd say, surprises that they weren't able to make it in that top 128, even though that ladder phase was so grueling. All 3 of them are here now, and honestly, even though they weren't there initially, guys, it feels like all 3 of them are names that deserve to be here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of those things that we look at as there's especially with the way that the ladder worked, the ELO system. It's such a tight you know, the one of the things about this version of CRL is it doesn't give you a lot of room for error. In previous versions, you had, like we mentioned before, you had a season to have ups and downs to reward long-term performance. This one has been very much a put up or shut up type of year for Clash Royale.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see some of those guys who you think that if there was a full year of competition to really like let things sort themselves out, they would have risen to the top. Seeing those guys come on through is something that I think a lot of fans do want to see. And speaking of going through a couple more updates, Kitashian does get into the second round via a bye in our second group, as well as Bancito and Sweep, who will face off against each other in round number 2 as well. Here's a couple more fun ones in group number 2. SB takes out Lord Cass, and he'll be facing the former world champion Diego B, who beat Firkin. So SB and Diego B going up against each other in round number 2, as well as Hugo, who had a bye out of France. He'll be going up against Rad in that second round. But speaking of, you mentioned Jupiter King earlier, we're going to go ahead and jump in right now with Jupiter King and Rocket and catch up on some of that action. And here we go. And we are jumping into game number 3, playing catch up here. I believe this is still round 1 for Jupiter King and Rocket. And we're seeing Royal Hog Skeleton King with the Mother Witch. This is, I believe this deck popped up late in the 20-win challenge, if I remember correctly. And this Royal Giant, though, getting in deep with not much DPS on it.
Yeah, I mean, you look there, Royal Giant still able to get some good damage in. And yeah, this is that deck that showed up late in the 20-win challenge. It screamed to the top of that 20-win leaderboard and was definitely incredibly frustrating to play against and is still here in the world. That Mother Witch, Mirror Mother Witch, can be devastating.
Absolutely brutal. You see one level 13 Mother Witch pig getting on the tower there in the opposite direction. 1564 to 1129 are the numbers at the moment. Fireball in to work on those low zappies. And this is some pressure. Skeleton King should pick up all that damage, though.
Yeah, Skeleton King, AC said it during one of our Royale Masters broadcasts. It honestly feels like a champion at this point. It is so strong. It is in so many decks, and that Death Bomb just does so much for you defensively. You get offense out of it. You always get defense. And I actually don't think a lot of people are out there screaming for a Giant Skeleton nerf, but it is fascinating how viable it is competitively now in 2022.
Here we go into our final minute. Triple Elixir on its way. Fisherman down. And this has been the game, trying to play the Fisherman prediction battle there in the middle of the board. Rocket so far holding on here against Jupiter as we get into our final. But here we go. Arrows, Piggy, Snowball plus Skarmy trying to slow down the Hogs. And they get nothing. While the Royal Giant isn't going to get that shot. It gets one. Doesn't get two. Fireball at the bridge.
I mean, Jupiter King has to recognize that those arrows need to be saved to deal with that Skarmy. You can even arrows and then mirror arrows. You'll take care of the Skarmy. You'll take care of the Mother Witch as well. And right there you do see, and there it is. There's the mirrored arrows. Apparently Jupiter can hear me. He gets them in. He cleans up that Mother Witch. 773 to 615. Still anyone's game.
And that Skeleton King is in very, very deep. Not quite deep enough. Does he need the arrows here to clear out the way? Arrows come in. And look at this, 609. Piggy touches. Arrows get in. Is the mirror arrows available? Fireball opposite direction.
Yeah,
350.
wow.
Whoa, 50 HP, and Rocket takes game number 3. The second round of arrows not able to get there, and Jupiter King falls into the lower bracket.
Rocket did a great job there late game of recognizing, look, I've got the damage lead. I don't need to get too many Royal Giants down. I need to create a little bit of offensive pressure where and when I can, but I need to just be able to defend either it's mirrored piggies, a giant skeleton, whatever it is, and I have the spell power game. I have him beat that way. Great job by Rocket taking down a big name out there in the world.
Josh, what do you think? You got to jump in and watch that one for a minute. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, you know, I hate that I was brought in and then I wasn't allowed to talk during that segment because, yeah, that finish was brilliant.
Josh, you were able to talk.
No, I know I was able to, but I wasn't able to. I never know just how much power I have. And yes, I mean, you talked about it during the end of the game. There was a time where he went in with the arrows, and the entire time I was screaming at him, You know the Skarmy is going to come down. You have to mirror your arrows. You are going to take the tower. Yes, there's an RG coming at you, but you know, the final 20 seconds, it's anybody's game, and the person with more spells is often going to win at that point. So he had the opportunity to go in with the double arrows. He didn't utilize that opportunity, and it was game over.
Yeah, I mean,
you have to excuse me for a second. I'm being attacked by a child. Give me just one moment.
Papa Rich there. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where when you play that deck, you have to recognize that the arrows, mirrored arrows, is really the best way to deal with those Mother Witches. And those Mother Witches are going to be absolutely, are going to be absolutely brutal against those hog pushes coming in, especially when you have something to set that line up high. And obviously, like you said, AC, knowing that Skarmy is going to come down, you always have to have the arrows ready to go. But Rocket able to play really well there. And so far, Josh, like you're saying, these guys seem to all be playing pretty well. It doesn't seem like nerves are a big thing that we've caught in the few games that we've seen so far today. There haven't been big misplays. There haven't been big moments of not recognizing matchups and what you need to do. Seems like people are nice and easing into their first day of really intense CRL competition.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of players just space out troops, use spells correctly, even though technically wasn't perfect in that final game. And yeah, just overall very impressed with the gameplay that we've seen so far. And I mean, I really like the deck choices as well. I loved that deck choice of using the Giant Skeleton plus the Mirror plus the Royal Hogs. It is one of the most difficult decks to stop. And yeah, I just really like what I've seen in round one. And wouldn't be shocked if we kind of just see the same pattern going on throughout the day. Similar decks throughout. I was looking at some of the other decks that were used in this competition, and it's more the same. It's, you know, the RGs, the Royal Hogs, not a lot of, you know, different decks. There's really no minor decks that have been used so far that I've seen. No loon decks, just a lot of the staples inside the meta.
It feels like the drill deck, the hog deck that's out there, and that Royal Hog mirror deck, and RG, like you said, are probably going to be the most popular decks used. I mean, there has been that Mighty Miner Graveyard deck that's been popping up. A little bit more Mighty Miner Bait has been showing up, Mighty Miner in general. But when you talk about the strongest things in the meta, when you look at a lot of these guys that are out there streaming or putting up content, it really just feels like drill is still kind of the dominant win condition, but we haven't seen a lot of it yet today, you know?
Oh, but we'll see it. Don't you worry. The drill spammers are on their way, and I am here for it, because if there's one win condition that can make up for you being a fat-fingered, mediocre player, it's the skill drill. And it's my personal best. Both my personal best is with skill drill, my best challenge performance with skill drill. I'm excited to see it today.
Yeah, I mean, I've been happy for a while because Mortar's still just been strongly, firmly at the top of the meta. AC, don't tilt your head. You know it is. Mortar plus Miner Control. I'm sure we'll see more of that. It does feel like in terms of control decks, it is Miner Poison with Mortar that has been the most popular lately. I mean, Mortar's still such a strong building, and then being able to get that cycle back around, just Miner Poisons going relentlessly on the board. It's all about that control. And so we are about to hop into our next group of the day. I know you guys are probably wondering why we're talking so much. Why aren't we watching any gameplay? Do not worry, we're going to get to it. This is just the very beginning of our summer qualifiers to get us to World Finals. There's a lot more action coming your guys' way over the next month.
Yeah, it's going to be a whole lot of fun. We have some great matchups in round number 2. I think we're going to be going to that Ruben IMJP matchup, but Asaf and KK in round number 2, that's an absolute banger. And as you can see, we're talking about the players who are getting one step closer. Remember, nobody eliminated yet. We are in double elimination, so the players who lost today will drop down into that lower round 1, where we'll have 64 players there. We're going to wait to get through a little bit more action before we find out who their opponents will be. But some great round 2 matchups to keep an eye on. Asaf versus KK, that's an absolute banger. Michifu, a.k.a. Mario now, will face Codigo in round number 2 as well. That's going to be a blast. As we mentioned earlier, Adriel versus Capgun is going to be a great one for a lot of people who are fans of the young player Adriel, and of course Capgun, a top-tier player out of Egypt. Line versus Pompeo is in round 2 as well. So we've got some bangers coming up here.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, obviously all of those guys that had their first round buys are now going to step up, and like you just said, Rich, a lot of really, really great matchups here in that round number 2. Lion and Pompeo is a super fun one, and it does feel like when you go through and you look, it is mostly the higher seeded player based off of their career history and their resume that have been able to play well throughout round number 1.
Yeah, one of the players, actually, I mean, you're totally correct with that. And a lot of the players, I'm looking through the list, I'm pretty much recognizing most, if not all these players. I think in Group D, there might be one player that I don't recognize, 2 players that I don't recognize entirely. And when I say entirely, I've seen the name, but I don't like really know who they are. So yeah, we are seeing the veterans be able to succeed. And one player that I really can't wait to see what happens in the set of Mario vs. Codigo. I don't know why I've had this love for Michifu's gameplay for the last 5 years. I think it's because of my history of being a ladder player. I mean, that's how all of the Clash Royale players started off. But Michifu was so fun to watch. He still is to this day. And I really can't wait. I want to see him in a second World Finals.
No matter where Michifu is in his career, I always feel like I'm kind of surprised when he doesn't go as far as like anytime he gets eliminated, whether it's in the first round or it's in the finals, I'm always like, huh. Because his gameplay is so good. He is so on top of things. His interactions are so clean. Also, from watching him in person, he was a pretty calm and collected dude up on the stage there. And he's always been a guy that's been fun to watch. I'm a big fan of Michi, and I'm glad that he's been showing up, at least what feels like a little bit more this year, but it's also because I've probably been more involved with the community events throughout the year, whereas last year in CRL, I feel like we weren't casting as many of his matches in our monthly finals, if that makes sense.
And, you know, a little update here. I didn't realize that we are already getting our lower bracket round 1 matches going on. So, Betfus and Sosa will be getting into their matchup pretty soon here.
Oh, wow.
We do have some of these ones. We have some of those matched up. We'll talk about more of that later. For now, Andrew, we're going to go ahead and say goodbye and bring you back on in a little bit. And, Josh, you and I are getting ready for what's going to be a killer one. Oh, I cannot wait for this one between IMJP and Ruben's. Let's go ahead, jump right in to this matchup. No more waiting. 2 former teammates. And you see maybe one of the strangest things here, the biggest shockers in all of Clash Royale. That's not TQ Ruben. That's Cal Ruben. What a huge change here, Josh.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't like seeing it. I understand, but it's always going to be TQ Ruben to me. I mean, that's how he got the start, and that's how everybody knows him. But definitely congratulations to him for moving on to Cal. And this is going to be an absolutely wonderful battle between the 2 players. JP going to be running the Mortar deck, so it is sick that Andrew has to walk off as soon as Mortar gets played. And on the other side, Ruben just going to be playing that Hog EQ deck that has had so much success over the past 6, 9, 12 months.
Yeah, this giant skeleton variation of Hog EQ with Archer Queen has become real nasty. And of course, as you mentioned, Giant Skeleton has really turned into a central piece of the meta. It's funny to rewind back to 2018 where Giant Skeleton was kind of a thing that was barely used in 2v2. And then somewhere along that next year, people just discovered how powerful it was in head-to-head play. And now Giant Skeleton is central meta. Absolutely right smack dab in the middle of it.
JP going to start off with an offensive poison on top of the Archer Queen. Will need to do a little something, and we do see the Skeleton Army on top. A beautiful lock to help protect the Archer Queen, and that Archer Queen is going to stay alive, allow for the Hog to be able to put in work. Mortar is going to lock into the Archer Queen, so that is going to be a misplaced Skeletons, and it all stems from the missed EQ. The Earthquake did not reach the Mortar, and that Mortar will still not get a shot. Interesting.
Miner to the back outside corner. Cannon goes high on the inside. We'll take the Miner off and maintain the lead for Ruben for the moment, 20-90 to 16-58. And of course, as mentioned before, these guys have a very long history together in Team Queso. When it was first announced that JP was officially joining the team, looked like an absolute dream team. between Ruben, JP, and of course, round that out with Kuchiku and Benihoo. And what did it turn into? Of course, it turned into the no-tilt Special Edition Championship early on in 2020, and then right into a CRL World Championship as well. So these two have achieved a lot together.
Right here, I actually love this offensive pressure from JP. Ruben has so many answers, and so this is actually just such a brilliant way to even form any kind of offensive push. He has the log for the Skarmy. He has the Dark Prince when, you know, log is not in cycle, whenever the Skeleton King pops the ability. So I love that he's applying pressure, but Ruben's deck is just so strong. Whenever he has the Hog offensively, he uses the Mortar and the Musketeer. That's 8 Elixir on defense, and the Hog still gets the shot for only 7 Elixir.
Miner goes to the inside this time. No pickup as the Dark Prince goes to the outside. Poison plus bats will get some decent value here. Archer Queen will not turn into anything. Do we vary the Mortar position here? Nope, Mortar in the exact same place, and you see Ruben waiting a little bit to make sure that Mortar is in the right spot before he does throw that Earthquake down. And now Miner to the back, bats up high, poison in. Here we go, triple Elixir. This is the pressure moment, and the Mortar is down. This time, though, EQ plus Hog plus Log. Will the Hog Rider get the shot? It does not. 356, but another Hog, and this cycle is nutty.
Yeah, he just can't do anything to it. The snowball plus the bats not going to be enough. Ruben is going to take game number 1. No opportunity. I was thinking in my head, maybe he has the chance to use the Skarmy at the bridge, try and predict the Hog that's going to come down. And Ruben was so fast with it. Always had the Earthquake, always had the pre-log ready to go for the Skarmy on defense. And, I mean, it's a great matchup for him, don't get me wrong, but he just played that so beautifully. He just controlled the entire game.
Giant Skeleton sits to the left-hand side, so we'll see what JP has planned. And, of course, you know, you talk about Ruben's long history with Queso. JP, long history in CRL, but kind of went all over the place. Spent season number 1 with Dignitas back in 2018. For CRL EU, and of course that Dig squad didn't quite turn out as they had hoped, and then moved over to CRL Asia for 2019, where he played with Kicks, and that was an interesting team where I believe also Pedro was on that squad as well, and then of course the big signing to come back home to Spain the following year. But JP has always been a talent, as we referred to him in the past, the golden-haired golden boy of Barcelona, Spain, a big play kind of player, whereas Ruben, the exact opposite. Ruben's methodical, Ruben's tight, Ruben's controlled. JP is an opportunist, so we'll see if he can find that opportunity here today against his former teammate.
Yeah, Ruben has the really awesome history of teaching players how to play Ghost. I really think that Ghost became a meta card solely because of how talented Ruben is with it. And you know, Giant Skeleton was kind of found because it just worked really well in a lot of different decks. People weren't really using it well, but nobody had that claim. And I mean, for the healer and for the Ghost, Ruben really taught players what it meant, you know, just to play calm, collected, and just correctly even.
Well, it's one of those things where I remember back during the Barb Hut meta, seeing Ruben play that Royal Ghost specifically to go to the middle to chip away at Barb Hut, and no one was doing it at the time. Yeah. And now it seems like such a thing where you go, oh, this just makes sense. Of course it should be doing that. Of course it should be going to the Barb Hut or taking things out in the middle. But he became kind of a surgeon with that Royal Ghost during that time period, using that hover mechanic to perfection. And as you said, kind of led to Royal Ghost being central meta.
Right here, JP is going to be using the Giant Skeleton Royal Hogs mirror deck. So far, having a lot of success, but with this deck, and a great attempt to use the NATO to keep the cannon cart alive. The problem with that is that even if the cannon cart would have stayed alive, there was the potential of the Giant Skeleton taking it out. So while I do like that he tried to do that, I actually do think it was kind of a misplay, and you know, we did see it not work whatsoever. So definitely a slight mistake on that end. But so far, I mean, JP hasn't had a lot of offensive opportunities, but still has a major advantage tower-wise.
Well, it's an interesting question here, right? I mean, this drill deck isn't that fast in terms of cycle, and neither is JP's deck. And you see this is going to be some good damage here from Ruben. The drill just doesn't have anything. Nice NATO to pull it all together. Magic Archer, Geometry, and that's going to be a ton of damage here just like that. Ruben takes back the lead, but now a huge counter push coming opposite way from JP.
Yeah, tower at 1500 HP. What is it going to be whittled down to? 1091. Yeah, just a slight misplay. JP not able to defend properly. And I really thought that was going to be worse than it actually ended up being. I think it kind of, I mean, you know, that's why these players are pro players, because right there was certainly the opportunity to panic, use the arrows too early, not have the correct response. The goblins get onto your tower and start, you know, chipping away, but he stays calm and he doesn't over defend. He uses the right cards. So that was actually just a really great play right there. And let's see if he can get the Golden Knight dash that I know he wants to.
What?
And that is not gonna work. It just stays on top of the giant skeleton.
Well, I'm trying to figure out why that Golden Knight stayed right there. Maybe the ghost wasn't visible in time, but it really felt like there should have been a chain going on in that moment. Nice work from JP to prevent that Golden Knight from chaining. That might end up being the difference in this matchup with 22 seconds left.
These Magic Archers, while they do get a lot of value, they just seem to not be getting enough. They continue to walk into the opposite lane. He's not going to be able to defend. That's 8 Royal Hogs placed on the board. JP is going to be able to take game number 2, and we are going into a game number 3.
And here we go. So looking at game number 1, Royal Hogs, Archer Queen, Golden Knight, both out for Ruben, Skeleton King, and keep an eye out, JP did not play a champion in game number 2, so he does have 3 different champions to choose from. Gotta wonder what Ruben is going to be picking here as we go into game number 3. It's weird to think about this, Josh, but we just saw Royal Ghost versus Royal Ghost. It's so normal now. The hover mechanic, the ability to cross the river in the middle, wasn't introduced until June of 2020. So, you know, we had multiple years of Clash Royale where the Royal Ghost had to fight its way through that middle of the bridge. And it's only been a couple of years now where we've had that hover being built into the game.
Yeah, and it just makes so much sense. Like, we could have a Clash Royale version where Ghost wasn't effective whatsoever, but as long as that ability was still in the game, I would be okay with it, because it just feels right. And so I love that that's in the game. And yeah, I just want to give props to the balance team just for that one switch. I think it makes the game so much more real.
And you see JP running the very popular modern version of bait, the Mighty Miner Super Cycle. And if we do get to triple elixir, expect to see the skeleton barrels fly harder than a deep rain as we get into that very, very quick 3-card cycle late in game. Ruben with the Skeleton King in the mix. We'll see what kind of pressure he can put here. I think he'll let this one die, though, on the left-hand side, as he is down elixir.
Yeah, JP with actually a great usage of the ability. It's a hard card to use. A lot of times I see players use it very effectively on defense, but I see a lot of players not utilizing it on offense, not trying to get that chip tower on, or chip damage on top of the tower, and just getting it on top of the troops is always is also very, very important. Just a great use of the ability. We could see him pop it again, but no, he elects to just defend with a cannon in the tower and try and get offense with the Goblin Barrel, getting the tower down to 1668.
What does Ruben do here? Because he is very far behind on this cycle right now. That's nice for him to see this cannon way out in the middle of nowhere, but of course, with how fast this deck cycles, JP should be able to get back to another one fairly quickly.
Yeah, I mean, we often talk about using the RG and trying to set multiple RGs up, you know, one lane, this and that, but really it's just, can you overwhelm? We see the left side getting fairly low, but this isn't going to take your tower, and that's the problem with these pushes. Yes, you're going to be able to break through once, but it's never going to be enough, and then they're just going to defend and then cycle you out with spells. So at this point, I really don't know what his option is, it's going to require stellar defense from Ruben and then probably mistakes from JP. I don't see him winning without huge mistakes on JP's end.
And that was a great bit of defense there on Ruben's part, able to mitigate that entire barrel push, and we see now that it is the fireball. So only a single spell here for Ruben, and not having any of the classic small spells, especially no log here, going to make things hard against log bait. Mighty Miner going to put some damage on that right-hand side. Ruben does pull it back with the Skarmy, so does take care of business. He might have to fireball this one here, and he does on that left-hand side. Had to mitigate that damage. Dart Goblin gets through and puts on a ton as well.
Yeah, tower down to 737, and this pressure with the Dart Goblins, with the Spear Goblins as well. I mean, Spear Goblins for 2 Elixir get so much damage, 400, 500 HP worth of damage on top of the tower. And because Ruben has no small spell, he's just in such a tough position so often. The fact that this does not have Bar Barrel, does not have Log, it's game-changing in an already extremely difficult matchup.
Here we go, final 50 seconds, 15:85, and all that Mighty Miner does put a law onto that right-hand lane. Zappy's high. What does he have for this for the Goblin Barrel? Skarmy plus Fisherman drop to cover things up. Ruben has to start stacking, has to break on through here, but can he find a way while still not giving up that Goblin Barrel damage? And man, I don't know how I feel about the deep Goblin Barrel behind tower there.
Yeah, I feel like that was actually one of the only ways Ruben would be able to properly defend. I don't think it's going to matter, though. 20 seconds left. Good game coming out from both players. JP did not have to use his final card, and that's going to be a great game number 3. Just solid gameplay throughout. And yeah, JP has to be feeling great after being able to knock off Ruben.
Yeah, I mean, what a phenomenal matchup situation for him there at the end. Look, and if there's one thing you expect from Ruben, it's Royal Giant at some point. So I gotta wonder if JP was looking at what he had left and saw that and went, hey, I don't know what his other deck... That's the hard part, right? We don't know what the other deck was when we are doing this pre-submitted version of dual mode. But he probably looked at 2 decks and said, which one of these better matches up against RG, and went with a great choice here.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a great call because that's probably the exact thought process that he had. RG is going to be one of the decks that Ruben runs. And I don't know how I feel about using an RG deck without a small spell. I mean, I feel like it's so necessary to be able to wipe out, you know, the Skarmies, the Goblin Barrels, the Dark Goblins in the back, and not having a small spell, it just, there's too many matchups where you have no opportunity to win the game.
Well, with how swarmy the game is right now, and specifically how popular bait is right now, bait has kind of having a resurgence at the moment, where there's more classic variations, or of course these Mighty Miner versions. It does feel like you're hamstringing yourself a little bit, not being specifically prepared for that one. And JP provided a couple openings, but when he provided those openings for Ruben to play good defense, but absolutely slammed the door on any offensive opportunities.
Yeah, and overall, the matchup was played well by Ruben, but yeah, I just have to give so much props to JP with the offensive pressure that he had, and it's so weird to give props to a player who just spammed everything at the bridge the way he did, but it was continually throwing the Spear Goblins at the bridge whenever he had 2 Elixir, and I think it was a great recognition of the fact that he had no small spell, because there was a couple times, and actually the only reason why I was able to recognize that he had no small spell, I mean, other than the fact that there's 8 cards showing and, you know, one of them isn't a small spell, was the fact that he did a Spear Goblins at the bridge when there was still a Dark Goblin that was like trying to walk up. And because he spaced out the troops the way he did, the Spear Goblins can't be defended with a Skarmy, because then the Dark Goblin cleans up, and then there's another 3 Elixir coming down that he has to spend more Elixir. So it just kept putting him in these weird positions, and it's just because of just great game recognition from JP.
Well, reviewing the decks from this matchup, game number 1, it was Ruben running Hog, Giant Skeleton, Archer Queen Earthquake, and of course another thing that Ruben's known for running a lot is the Royal Hog, or is the Hog Rider, and Ruben ended up losing that one. JP running the Mortar Miner deck in game number 1, Mortar Miner Skeleton King, and that one turned out nicely for the JP. On to game number 2. This is the one that Ruben did pick up. It was Ruben running the Drill Golden Knight Magic Archer NATO, and I am JP with the Royal Hogs mirror deck that has become so frustrating lately. I want some of your opinions on that deck in a minute. And then, of course, finally in game number 3, it was JP going to the Mighty Miner bait against the Royal Giant deck. We're just go ahead and bring Andrew back on here for a couple of moments. But first, Josh, I want to ask you about that deck in game number 2, the one that's kind of roared into contention. It was the last couple of days of the 20-win challenge where it went from nowhere. It was not one of the top 3 or 4 decks to being the most successful deck in the 20-win challenge. Talk to me a bit about this this very, let's call it phone-breaking variation of Royal Hogs.
Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, we are looking at a very spam-filled meta, paired with the fact that we have double Mother Witch. And that card is so scary. I was actually messing around in a grand challenge last night, just kind of throwing a couple cards together, trying to see how the meta really felt. And Mother Witch with a mirror is just so broken. You have so many different ways to defend, to attack. Your opponent is going to use the fireball on the first one, so you can use both of them at the exact same time because they can't spell both of them, and they're never going to have 2 opportunities. If they bar barrel, then you just protect. It's so easy to play, and once you have double elixir, triple elixir, behind you, you really can't stop it. And then that's when you throw in the Royal Hogs. That's when you throw in the mirrored Royal Hogs, and you have 8 piggies on top of the tower.
Andrew, we're about to jump into we're going to join up with X Pedro and Diego B here, or Pedro. I don't know if it's X Pedro or Pedro, but just want to get your quick thoughts on Ruben JP before we cut you out.
Diego94 actually, I guess. But Diego B has been playing perfectly throughout the day. That was one thing that I was hoping to say, is Diego has not lost a game yet today. He stayed perfect through SB. And honestly, man, that was a great set between Ruben and JP. Game number 1, when Ruben got that second Hog Rider down in those final moments, it was such a beautifully orchestrated send. It was a Hog Rider plus an Earthquake, then a Hog Rider plus an Earthquake and a Log, then Hog Rider, Earthquake, Log, Hog Rider, Earthquake again to clean up that Skarmy, and it was like watching old school Ruben pick apart his opponent. But then JP just turning the entire set around. Beautiful stuff, man. It's a lot of fun to see 2 guys that know each other so well go the distance in a best of 3.
And as you guys can see here, not Diego B, Diego94, and not X Pedro. It's Pedro trademark, so X Pedro might have to change his name now according to some sort of international law, not entirely sure. But we are in game number 3 in this matchup, and Andrew, just in time for you to see a little bit of Mortar played.
Yeah, I'm always happy about it, unless I'm playing against that double Pigs, double Mother Witch deck. It can be really frustrating sometimes. I think I'm probably 50-50 with that matchup right now, because that Mother Witch, as Josh said, is so strong right now.
Josh, talk me through this matchup here so far. Right now, it looks like Pedro getting the better of it.
So yeah, you don't have to worry about the double arrows and the double Royal Hogs and the double Mother Witches, but you do have to worry about those Earthquakes. It's going to be so hard to get the mortars on top of the towers. A very simple play right there, using the E-Spirit to guide the mortar shots, and then a very good response using the Fire Spirit to have the Electro Spirit jump. But a simple cleanup using the Archer Queen, and the Archer Queen is still going to get a shot. That's right, getting the tower down to 2665, and now he has Earthquake in double elixir.
Talk me through the Archer Queen counters on both sides here, Josh. Of course, on one side it would feel like the Giant Skeleton might be the best response here at the bridge, and the other side here, Valk, guards. What's the best way to handle that Archer Queen?
Yeah, the great thing about this matchup and why it's going to be so fun is that both players have great answers once the Archer Queen crosses the bridge. But until then, these Archer Queens are going to get so much value. We see the poison, we see the log, But if the Archer Queen is going to be able to walk out, it's going to be perfectly healthy. It's going to be able to survive. Right there, the mortar does have to get the shot. Otherwise, the Archer Queen would have been able to pass. So it really is just who can win these bridge battles and keep their Archer Queens alive. That's going to be the winner of this game. And, you know, the Valk can do its best to try and reach across the bridge. But, yeah, it's really going to be who can keep the Archer Queen just healthy.
Andrew, you still with us here?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm just watching this gameplay, listen to AC break it down there. And, you know, it's an interesting thing here because you see Diego switch lanes with the RG to kind of bait out responses, strong responses on the left-hand side so you can get that second RG down on the right behind the giant skeleton. But so much DPS is on the side of Pedro's deck with those guards coupled with really anything.
And, you know, you're the mortar player here in the group. You're here with 45 seconds left. Not only how are you feeling at this moment in the gameplay, but what are you doing here with the minute 10 remaining?
I mean, I think really just more of what Pedro's been doing. Use that mortar defensively, get the guards down up high to get a ton of DPS in. You see there, the log has to come out, an earthquake has to come out, and an electro spirit. And Pedro opts to take that shot, I guess, with a late log, probably a bit of an oversight by him. So I'd say clean up the defense just a hair and be happy with where you're at.
46 seconds left, and now a big push on the board. Giant skeleton in front. EQ trying to help make a little bit of room here. Does get damage. Mortar high. Can it get the log? Archer Queen gets down just in time.
Yeah, minor poison your way out of this. You know, you've got good defenses at the bridge. You got a good way to set the line for the most part. You got to get more minor poisons down this late in the game.
Valkyrie trying to hold on here. 20 seconds left. Royal Giant gets picked up by the mortar as the EQ was already used. Diego 94 not able to get back around in time here to re-EQ that. So it feels like that should be the GG and the well played here. Hog gets taken care of by the log. Archer Queen going to work. High mortar will get the cleanup, and that's going to be it. Pedro taking out Diego 94 in 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, Pedro was just in a good spot there. You know, when Diego opted to switch lanes, that's just kind of letting you know, it's building that confidence and the mentality of like, all right, I'm in a good spot. My opponent's the one that is trying to change things up because this is not working for them. Let me just ride this wave all the way to the finish.
So
yeah, and I really like that he went in with the prediction, but not really a prediction, poison on the bridge. And it was really just to slow things down. Once you're in that final minute and you really do control the entire game, you can just halt the game for 10 seconds. And if there's only 50 seconds left and you have defensive opportunities with the Valk plus the guards, you have no answer when you're the RG player. There was a lot of pushes that I really thought had a lot of potential, and he went in with like an RG plus log plus E-Spirit. Everything gets wiped off the board, and then he has another mortar. He has another Valk. He has the log on defense. So just a great job of pressuring when he needed to and really pressuring hardcore at the end of the game, but then also just great defense.
Yeah,
I'll go ahead, Andrew.
I was going to say some updates while you guys were casting. I was going through and rapidly refreshing on our bracket page, and some big time surprises in the fact that Sosa has been eliminated, Cal Jonah has been eliminated, 2 guys that were playing pretty well throughout the year. They've both been eliminated from competition. One of the bigger names, Rich and Josh, is St. Bellican had a forfeit loss in his set against Jupiter King, and I went to Twitter already, and he made a post about it. I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but St. Bellican technically has a loss in the first part of that lower bracket. He was sent down there earlier in the day when he lost to Ender G. So that's 2 losses for St. Bellican, and while he still is technically in that elimination bracket, I'm not sure if he'll be showing up or what that is. You guys can obviously follow along with everything that's been going on in the Tournament Hub on your phone, but the better side of it, the good news, is there's a lot of guys that have been perfect. Diego B, Sweep, Morton, Line, Surgical Goblin, Pandora, every single one of them perfect on the day in game. Some of them 4-0, some 2-0.
And that's important to keep in mind now, right? Because with those 2 wins, Surgical Goblin will face trainer Toby in this next round. Winner is guaranteed a spot in next week. Morton versus Ender will be in next round as well. So the winner of that moves on. Pedro, who we just saw win, takes on Hajime for a shot to move on the next week. And rounding out our Group A, it's Line, the former no-tilt world champion, up against Pandora. So those are 4 matchups that the winner is guaranteed a spot in our next week in our top 32. The loser would still be alive, but then has to go down, of course, fight their way through the elimination bracket.
Yeah, when you look at some of these other matchups, because in that upper bracket we are already down to just 8 players. You look at Group 2, you got Hugo and Diego B. That's a great matchup. And it sounds like we might be going to Codigo, and I think I heard Gariko in there, which would be a super fun one. Gariko has played really strong late in this year in those community events. Codigo's been a little bit more quiet, I'd say, in terms of community events, even though he's been streaming every single day for several hours.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely on his grind here. Josh, Codigo, of course, longtime veteran. Grieco has kind of transitioned from a ladder player to becoming a really talented, really strong competitive player.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, him and Mugi kind of bounced onto the scene at the exact same time. Both players just waiting to become 16 so that way they could compete. And yeah, I mean, Grieco, one of my favorite players to watch. I kind of like openly weeped once he followed me back on Twitter, and my mom was asking what's wrong, and I told her it was happy tears, so it's okay. And yeah, I mean, he's just so great. Codigo on the other side, I was laughing when he was talking about how much he's like putting in the work, and not because I disagree. I was looking at his streaming schedule. I was looking at his VODs, his clips, and every single stream was over 6 hours. He streamed 5 days in a row the past 5 days.
Wow.
And I think one of them was like 8:23 or something when it came to the total time of a stream that day. So I just want to give more props to Codigo. There's a reason why we're seeing him twice today, because he is that man. He wants to succeed.
That's wild.
You look at Codigo's matchups. He just played a best of 3 against Michifu, and Codigo rocked Royal Giant and Magic Archer Minor Wall Breakers in his 2 wins there. And then he also ran Royal Hogs, it looks like, in one of his losses. So, you know, Codigo is moving around, playing a lot of different win conditions. When you look over at Gariko, it looks like he has won his last 2 2-0. Codigo has at least dropped a game here and there. But Gariko's been all over the board as well. He's obviously playing that Giant Skeleton Mother Witch Royal Hogs mirror deck that I'm sure we'll see a lot of today. We saw someone else play, and he also wanted to replicate the Hog, EQ, Archer Queen. He didn't go Giant Skelly, though, because he needed that for the other deck. He went with Valkyrie instead. And then in his second set, it was the first time that we'd seen today, but he went with Lava Mirror. Not Lava Clone, but Lava Minor Mirror. And he was able to beat a Hog EQ deck with Giant Skeleton and Archer Queen. So Gariko and Codigo have been doing exactly what I think you need to do in this dual format, which is just play them all. Play all the win conditions out there. Do not let your opponent guess what you're going to bring into the next set. Because like you said, Rich, at the top of the day, there's only a few sets to prove it, and only a few sets before you get knocked out.
Yeah, not a lot of time. And speaking of not a lot of time, time has run out for a few players as our lower bracket has finished its first round. So some updates there. Hosseil able to survive in that lower bracket round number 1. He will stay alive here. The former, I believe, Sparky player, Guanic, does exit the tournament early on here with a loss to Osama, who will face Michifu in the next round of the lower bracket. Asaf losing to KK in our upper bracket. He'll go down and face Alpha QQ on the lower side of it. Some players still out now. Yosoi Rick all the way out. Yeah. Viper still alive in that lower bracket. Furkan, for those of you Turkish fans at home, still alive as well. And that's some of our lower bracket update here. Betfa still in the mix. I do see that St. Belican looks like he is staying alive in the lower bracket. Jupiter King gone, so Belly facing Diego 94 in the next round. And those are probably our biggest names who've already exited the tournament.
Oh, that was, yeah, I read that wrong, and I saw Belly staying alive. So, yeah, I'm sorry. It was Belly that stayed alive with a forfeit win. That's what he was tweeting about, and Jupiter King, who got eliminated. So our late join has an early exit here in Jupiter King. And speaking of exits, Rich, goodbye to you, my friend. We'll be back with you in just a couple of matches, but right now we're hopping into Codigo and Gariko in just one moment. AC, like I said, we've seen more of Gariko in the competitive scene, but Codigo has been there every single day, grinding away. Do you have any favorites in this matchup based off of your experience, based off of what we've seen so far, or does it feel like a bit of a coin toss because these guys are so evenly matched?
I think if you asked me that question 4 months ago, I would have said Greco 100%. I have to side with him. You know, he's obviously, I think when it comes to raw talent and just, you know, who's the better player just right off the cusp, I would immediately say Greco. But when you take a look at the work, when you take a look at the career that Codigo's had and the fact that he's still putting in these 8-hour grind sessions, and I mean, with Clash Royale streamers, with Clash Royale players, I remember I used to stream, you know, 4 hours a day, and then I would get off and I would make myself a bowl of cereal, and then I would find myself immediately opening the app as I was eating my cereal.
Yeah.
And I know that he's doing the exact same thing. So I think right now, as long as Codigo can continue to use these, you know, not meta decks and kind of just mess around with everything, I think I would have to side with Codigo and give the advantage to him.
Well, we're going to find out right now. Codigo top of your screen, Greco at the bottom. And yeah, talent is great, but hard work does pay off. And for Codigo, it has been very, very successful here today. And you know Codigo wants to be back at those World Finals, and I'm sure Greco does as well, as we have a bit of a stop and stare here at the top of our third set of the day. And just a quick reminder of what we were just talking about. Greco in his last set went heavy. He went Lava Hound and Royal Giant. First set a little bit quicker. He went Hogs and Hog. So this time coming out with Zappies and Arrow early on. Looks like it could be that Mother Witch Mirror deck with Royal Hogs. We'll find out.
And we could possibly see Graveyard on Codigo's side, still looking like it could be the Valkyrie Skeleton King variant. Inferno Dragon actually does get the tower down to 2459. So not necessarily a misplay, but the Inferno Dragon doesn't travel with the Royal Hogs, and instead just immediately goes to the tower. And right there, we do see it. Oh, this, the skeleton protects the Valkyrie right there. Very important play.
Yeah, and that was one of those things where it looked like Greco had this defense completely sewn up. Skelly pops just a second too early. Fisherman not in the right place. Valkyrie gets on top of the tower. And yeah, from Greco, that's already 2 misplays, because the first one, I agree, you know, those Royal Hogs, if they were placed 1 tile lower, would have gotten a lot less damage out of that Inferno Dragon. And now Zappies have to come down as a mirror Zappies, so that's going to cost 5 elixir to deal with this push coming across the bridge. So you see Greco down an elixir with very, very minimal counter push, and Codigo just in a wonderful spot as of right now. And you see Codigo playing that Tombstone early on. Goes, all right, no problem. I know you want to save the Mother Witch for the graveyard, so I can use this Tombstone up high.
Yeah, and so this is the problem with using Dark Prince instead of Skeleton King and instead of using Giant Skeleton. Because with the Dark Prince, you have to get aggressive. You have to use the Valk at the bridge. You have to graveyard immediately with it. And that can provide some really strong counter pushes, some really strong opportunities for Greco. And that's why I actually don't like the Dark Prince in this deck. Right here, he has the opportunity to just go all out aggressive on offense and just win bridge battles. I don't necessarily love the Dark Prince variant, and that's going to cost him. Yeah,
that's the game right there. I mean, whether it's done with arrows or with a little bit more damage, Greco just needs to play some defense here. Not going to be a problem. Mother Witch comes down. Fireball comes down just a second late. Arrows in to take the tower. And that was a dominant game number 1 there by Greco, and I think it honestly just shows how strong that deck is, because Greco started that game off with 2 relatively substantial mistakes, and Codigo was still not able to climb back from it. And again, a big part of that, like you said, AC, could be that Dark Prince. Dark Prince and Valkyrie don't have a lot of overlap in terms of playing, or I guess they have a lot of overlap in terms of playing them in the same set of 8 cards, because they both do that splash damage. They both are pretty tanky on the ground, and maybe just needing a more utility-based card there was Codigo in game number 1.
Yeah, and then it sets him up for a lot of danger in games 2 and 3. The drill will come out from Greco, and I love that. I mean, you don't have Valk and you don't have Dark Prince.
Yeah.
So what's a great response to that? You do use a drill Magic Archer NATO deck in game number 2. I love this from Greco. Codigo on the other side is going to use the mortar. The bats will be able to take out the cannon cart. But the cannon cart, that's a 5-for-6 trade. A great play for Greco. And he can just set up for a defense knowing that Codigo doesn't really have the strongest offensive pushes coming.
Yeah, that's an excellent observation that you make there about playing the drill because of the options that are available. Now Codigo obviously shows, look, if my cycle was a bit better, I'm sure I could have dealt with that first drill maybe a bit more at ease with the Skeleton King and the Skarmy. Those are going to be both two great ways to deal with the Goblins, but then you got to think about what's the other side of that coin with Greco. You know, how often is he hovering that NATO to pull away those Skellies or to pull away that Skeleton King? And I'm sure we'll see more of that once we get into double and obviously once we're into triple elixir.
So right there does place the miner a bit better. The Goblin will go after the miner instead of the tower, so that is going to be protected. 2388 to 3052. No Magic Archer to take out the miner, and that is not going to be a Magic Archer for the mortar. Again, he is going to elect to use the cannon cart as the game goes on, and especially if he plays the mortar in the right lane. I would not be shocked to see the Magic Archer try and snipe the mortar plus the tower.
Yeah, I mean, this becomes somewhat of an interesting matchup conversation just because of that Cannon Cart Magic Archer combo. The Cannon Cart, always a great option to pull out against the mortar. The Magic Archer, always great for lineup. Both these guys in, I'd say, relatively decent spots matchup-wise. But like you said, Codigo still struggling with the drill a hair. And we'll see if Greco can really punish him for that, as he sends in another drill right now. Bats come down, still no NATO, and there's the late NATO. 2 Goblins on tower, and that's exactly what you have to expect with this matchup.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a fair bit of mistakes from Codigo.
Yeah.
Game number 1, I really think that just double elixir, Vault Graveyard at the bridge, never going to be the play when your opponent has Mother Witch, and I really think that gave the game away. And then in game number 2, 25 seconds ago, he plays the Skeleton King in the back and then recognizes that he still has the Musketeer on defense, and the Musketeer walks in front of the Skeleton King.
Yeah.
So that's 2 major mistakes that are just game-changing it entirely.
So Codigo trying to right his wrongs here with this push coming across the bridge. Poison comes down, Skarmy at the bridge, and yeah, AC, I mean, some of these pushes are just kind of, I'd say, a little surprising and a little bit of over-commitments coming out of Codigo, but obviously he's better than I am, so he's probably just feeling the pressure. But he's still got a lot of time. I think he just needs to clean up his gameplay a bit.
Yeah, but the problem is once triple elixir happens, and now that he has the left side down pretty low as well, this is where it really becomes a problem. Because if it's a right lane versus right lane, you can just poison on defense. You can have that, that really strong offensive pressure where you still clean up the troops well. But when you have both towers to go into, it really makes every single defense so difficult. You have the 20% health troops on the right side, and then all of a sudden your opponent goes drill plus Magic Archer plus NATO on the left, and he takes out the left completely. So this is just a really tough spot for Codigo.
And you can see Greco is holding that cannon cart almost as a only call and response card. Every time the mortar's played, the cannon cart comes down. If the mortar's played at the bridge, cannon cart comes down. If the mortar's played defensively low there, you see cannon cart cycled in the back. And that's really smart because you want to have as many cannon carts down as you can play in this set or in this matchup, but obviously you don't want to force it out when the mortar is in cycle. So we see Codigo getting a little bit of damage here on both sides. Poison plus some on the right, Musketeer on the left. 2175, the lowest tower for Greco, but still a substantial lead here for the Japanese player.
Yeah, and here we go. We do see the double Magic Archer, the NATO to get the Skeleton King off the Goblins. Left tower is going to get low, down to 1330. And, I mean, we just see constant defense and then constant offense cycled in. 8 seconds left. Miner plus Poison not going to be enough, even if he didn't have any kind of response in his hand.
So much was done correctly by Greco in this set. I mean, it started off, like we said, with those 2 mistakes in game number 1 defensively, but obviously they weren't so substantial he couldn't come back from them. But then when you talk about the way that he played the rest of game number 1, how he controlled game number 2, and as you pointed out, AC, at the top of game number 2, just recognizing the drill being a very, very strong win condition because of what Codigo decided to use in game number 1. And honestly, it did feel like that was a big part of why Codigo struggled. He was always having to overspend on defense, or early on when you talk about those miter mortar minor mortar decks. In single elixir, you want to be able to get some of that minor chip damage in, but Codigo, because of the weird cycle he was in, he kept having to use his minors to defend the drill, which not only does it eliminate one of your levels of offense, but it also just isn't a great cleanup for those goblins.
Yeah, actually, you know what? Because he uses the minor on defense on top of the drill, that's why his mortar pushes were so funky at the beginning. Because, you know, if you use the mortar plus the bats to take out the cannon cart, you need something to protect the bats.
Right.
And then, you know, it forces out the Ewiz on the bridge, but then you have a minor on top of your tower. If you go in with a minor that you absolutely need, and because the minor is out of cycle, you don't have to really worry about the bats. The tower will take it out, and then you have those 6-for-5 trade-offs. So yeah, I mean, there were mistakes, but then you also do have to factor in a bad cycle will make it so that the first 2 minutes, which are some of the most important minutes when you're using Mortar Minor deck, you don't have that opportunity.
All right, we're going to hop into another matchup here between AirSurfer and Surge TS. And we're going to come into the end of game number 2 here. And it looks like Surge is able to steal game number 2. And we will be going to a game number 3. So that'll be deciding here very, very quickly. And yeah, it's interesting when you talk about that minor bats push, because for just 5 elixir, it's so cheap, but it always demands a massive response. And when you don't have that pressure to create early in single elixir, and force out those negative trades like you're talking about, AC, it is incredible kind of looking at the breakdown of how that match fell apart for Codigo, starting with something even that small that early on.
Yeah, that definitely would have been, I mean, it would be a great YouTube video where you just break down each step, you know, why the cycle does this, you know, why it's a problem, why it's, you know, a solution for the other player. Definitely an interesting game, but an even more interesting game is this one, because this one made it to game number 3. AirSurfer and Surge DS both using drill, one using bait, quick cycle, one of them using lava.
Yeah, I mean, Mighty Miner here with that sizzle, the drill, whatever you want to call it, has been actually probably at this point for the matches that we've watched the maybe tied for or the most used champion. Him and Archer Queen have been showing up a lot, and obviously Skeleton King rearing his head, but Mighty Miner doing well in this current meta, and Surge DS going to be, I'd say, relatively happy with his matchup at the moment. This deck cycles so quickly. You have the opportunity to get another Dark Goblin down. I think the last card is... Actually, I was going to say the last card I was going to say could be Log, but I think it might actually... Would it be Rocket? Well, I guess we'll find out. But not having any sort of small spell is a bit of a risky move there, so we'll see.
Yeah, I forgot what variation this tends to be. The ones with, like... Oh my goodness, this is going to be a loon on the tower. But yeah, I think it might be arrows, but who knows? That's going to be 2 shots for the loon. That is a huge swing of momentum for AirSurfer. And right there, with only 3 elixir, how does he want to respond? He does use the zap. But I actually want to take a look back. I think it was about a minute ago. And it was the very first push. AirSurfer had the lava coming down. He had the skeleton dragons coming down. And he knew his opponent was going to protect the Dark Goblin. So what does he do? He waits till the very last second when he can use the fireball. And, you know, it's those plays that the pros make where, you know your opponent is going to defend. So if they choose to defend with, like, a Mighty Miner or skeletons to protect the Dark Goblin, you know that spell is going to come down no matter what. So I just love how he chose to set that push up. And it's just a small thing, but a delaying of the spell was just really impressive on AirSurfer's side.
Yeah, the patience and the recognition of what your opponent has in cycle and what they're going to use to defend is something that's really, really important. And it's one of those things that a lot of players out there, if your gut is telling you to do something or not to do something, you should probably listen to it. In that moment, I'm sure AirSurfer goes, whatever happens, I need to make sure I hold the fireball. No matter how much bait he gives me, no matter how much fireball value he gives me, that Dark Goblin cannot stay alive. So right now, AirSurfer reaping the rewards of his decision-making, 575 to 1402. Surge TS still focusing a lot on that right-hand tower, and while AirSurfer doesn't have any form of log or NATO, he's been doing a great job with the fireballs, the skarmies, the zap plus, whatever it may be. Surge TS having a bit of difficulties, but Surge only needs a little bit more damage before you have to start worrying about that rocket mirror rocket. So you can see AirSurfer just keeping up the pressure.
Wow, and an important play right there. The Mighty Miner does take out the bomb tower, and right here, that lava is going to be able to immediately go to the tower, not going to be focused on anything else. That is a skeleton dragon that is not going to make it. But this fireball on top of the bomb tower, actually, it's not even going to need a fireball. He could go in with the loon. He has so many options.
Yeah, Surge has just spread himself so thin, and now you see Inferno Dragon on the right-hand side. Maybe Skellies or a Fire or Ice Spirit come down. There's the Skellies, but the Skellies are late. No Ice Spirit in cycle, and that is a tower that is sizzled down into nothing. And we called it. You got Ice Spirit or Skellies got to come down. Neither of them come down in time, and AirSurfer able to go 2-1 over Surge TS, doing it up in the skies. And that's got to make you happy. I know you and AirSurfer are good friends, and I think from all of us in the caster booth, it's always great to see an OG play well.
Yeah, sorry, you're going to have to give me 22 seconds so I can text him a congratulations. I'll do that when I get off the screen. Yeah, I mean, definitely congratulations to AirSurfer. And that was one of the most entertaining games that I've seen in the last several months. I feel like a lot of times when I watch pros play, I fully understand the thought process. I fully understand how they came to that decision. And for him, every single play he made, I would have done something differently. How he defended Goblin Barrels, a lot of the times there was times where he was spending 7 elixir for Goblin Barrels. There was, at the very end, he used the Skeleton Dragons plus the Zap, instead of just the Zap or just trying to make an all-out, all-out assault, all-out push. And it was just played so much differently than I would have expected, and from what I would expect from other pros even, not just from someone who doesn't, play competitively anymore. He just played it differently. And that was so entertaining to watch. I loved how he set up, his loom pushes, his lava pushes, why he fireballed, why he didn't fireball, why he delayed, why he didn't. That was just a great game from AirSurfer.
Yeah, and again, you love to see those moments of patience and poise of holding on to responses that need to be held for, like I said, a Dark Goblin there. So let's bring our good friend Rich Slaton back on. Rich, a lot of action's been going down while we have been on screen. You've been looking here, and we have a lot of big-time eliminations that have already come through with some big names, including, I'm seeing right here, CMG Mini just got beat 2-0 by Humble Keef. What do you got for us, man?
Some big news here. The first one I was watching off stream. It came down to the wire, Morton versus Ender at the end of the upper bracket, and Morton squeaking out by under 200 HP, a nail biter finish, playing the Mirror Royal Hogs deck against Josh. You would have loved to see it against 3 Musketeers, 3M Pump out of Ender, and just a nail biter there. But Morton does qualify for next weekend and keep his hopes alive. On the other side of it, Surgical Goblin takes the L and drops into the lower bracket.
Wow.
So he will be in the final round of the lower bracket. He only has to win one more match, but he does have to play an elimination game as we get to the finals of the lower bracket. Other big news, though, there was a big time matchup in the lower bracket. Viper versus Ruben, last year's number 4 finisher on the seeding versus, of course, the former world champion. Viper coming out on top. Ruben will not be going to World Finals in Helsinki this September.
Wow, that is some big time stuff. No LCOP, no Ruben at World Finals this year. And you talk about, I was just laughing because, first of all, no one should play 3 Musketeers in competitive. Josh, we have now cast a lot of matches, and we've now been told about matches. 3M is at a 0% win rate, I feel like, when you and I are on a broadcast together. And the other part of it, in Trainer Toby, I feel like the only people who are happy for Trainer Toby right now are probably his parents, because everyone else in the world wants Surgical Goblin back at World Finals in 2022. But big time congrats to him for taking down the goated one and sending him down to the lower bracket. Man, it's insane when you talk about that 128 down to 32, and some of the people we're already saying goodbye to this early on in our run.
Okay, wait. I just want to say this. It has a lower win rate than Wizard, and it just kills me. Like, this should not be happening.
That's That's crazy. And let's just take a moment to check in on some of the players who have moved through that you haven't seen yet. KK does win his match against Alexi, so KK is through to next weekend. Does make the top 32, does guarantee himself some prize pool, as well as Cal Sub moving on. IMJP, speaking of Team Queso players, does beat Doodoo, so IMJP will move on. Capgun taking down Boss 2-1. Boss still alive, but the Egyptian Capgun now all the way through. Of course, you already saw AirSurfer beat Surge TS. Sandbox taking down Yuya, so Sandbox moves on. Hugo beating Diego B 2-1. Diego still alive, but Hugo for next weekend. King Tico, and here's a fun one for you guys. The Canadian sweep moving on to our top 32. We'll see him next weekend as well.
Yeah, and I'm seeing here Pandora 2-0 over MS Josette, 2-0 over X Ali, and then a 2-1 over Lion. So Pandora's been having a great day-to-day as well, going 6-1 in games. And honestly, I mean, there's a few surprises in terms of a couple people that have been eliminated. But for the most part, when you look on through here, it feels like there's a lot of expected people that have made it on through to our top in the upper bracket.
You know, I will say this. I 100% guaranteed last night that Capgun was going to be able to move on to the next round. He beat me. I was 11-2 in my grand challenge, and he just destroyed me. I got like 300 tower damage, and I was like, wow, this guy played great. He is going to do well. And I don't know if he used the deck that I used against him. He probably didn't, because it was some funky off-meta deck. But I kind of do want to look at his Royale API and just see if he might have thought about using it.
Who is this?
Capgun.
Oh, Capgun. I mean, I can try to check here for you.
Okay, look for Pekka. You'll notice if
you'll know it when you see it. Okay, I will say this: he ran a Mortar, Skeleton King, Cannon Cart, Magic Archer minor deck. So that's kind of weird, a little weird, not too insane. But unfortunately, Josh, I do not see any Pekka in his used deck pool. Everything else looks pretty on brand. He went with Lava Loon, he went with Hoggy Q, and he went with RG Lightning. So unfortunately, he cannot take the credit there.
I'll find a way. Don't you worry.
Don't count me out early, man. Don't count me out early. Yeah, and so right now we're just waiting for the next round to start. A lot more eliminations coming your way today. You know, Rich, you've been talking about it. A lot of these guys already have made it on through to that top 32 or that top 16 in the upper bracket. But in terms of the lower bracket, there's still a lot of people that we have to say goodbye to.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, it's like I said, today's a bloodbath. We're just saying bye-bye to tons of different people throughout the day. We are waiting right now for a couple ones to finish up. Z and Coca RX are still going head-to-head. Another great matchup that we're going to have in our next round of the lower bracket. I'm really excited for it. We mentioned Viper beating Ruben. Viper will be taking on none other than one of our longtime Japanese favorites, Reiki Jones versus Viper.
Yes.
So that's another fun one that we got coming up.
You love it. Reiki Jones, one of our I mean, if you're in the same room as that guy, you just feel like you're in a better mood. I can see AC already smiling from ear to ear. AC, you love you some Reiki Jones.
It's so fun. Like, as soon as someone, I have never met anybody in the Clash Royale community where you don't say his name and then like everybody just lights up. Like you see sparkles in people's eyes that have never sparkled before. Reiki is an amazing guy, and he brings an energy to the room that no one else does.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that you want at World Finals just so you can be in the same room as him, just so you can watch him play Clash in person. And you know, that's the other thing that we haven't really touched on yet, and since we have some time here in between rounds, is just that so many of these players have never ever stepped on a Clash Royale stage, and then you're gonna get thrown in World Finals with the crowd, with the casters live, with all the effects, and I'll tell you, we've seen at least layouts of this stage, and it is gonna be absolutely incredible. I just feel like so many of these guys are going to step out there and they're not going to know what hit them. Whereas people like Morton, like Surge, who have been around for a long time, who've done that competitive thing and have done World Finals in person before, I feel like they have a really big leg up in terms of confidence and composure once we get to that final stage.
You know, I really hope if there's not a hand cam where we can see the shakes from these players,
Yes.
you know, we have to do a hand test or something like that, because there is nothing better than seeing the fear. You can see it in their eyes when there's fear, but you can see it in their hands when they're truly afraid of that moment.
First, I thought you said hand cannon, like to launch shirts or something, or like confetti, and I was like, all right, hey, I see where you're taking it.
Yeah,
but
let's
yeah,
get this going.
I do love the hand cams, because it's true. When you're there in person, you can see their whole upper body just like trembling. And I mean, I've been there. I've been to Game 11 of a Classic Challenge. I know what pressure feels like.
That's too real there, Josh. Andrew. Another fun matchup that we have in our lower bracket round 3, and maybe he's changed his name from Chief Keef. I believe that's still Chief Keef, Humble Keef, unless that's a different Keef, up against Kitashian. So that's going to be another fun one we have coming up here. A lot of the Japanese pros still in the mix here. Kita, Rad, of course, versus SB in that next round. Of course, on the upper side of things, we did see KK, I believe, to finish off his qualification. Let me confirm that one more time here. Yes, KK will be moving on to next week for sure, so we know that he's still in the mixed. We saw Grieco over Codigo, and Pandora as well. So a lot of those Japanese pros still will be moving on.
Yeah, Kitashian's one of those players that I've seen a little bit more of him later on this year. And it's been exciting to watch him play. We'll see if he can put it all together and get himself to World Finals. But we do have our next matchup, at least in my ear, and it's going to be SB versus another person who you love, Josh, in Radwimps. Rad, another great pro out there in the world, and this is, of course, an elimination game. SB was able to beat Droxbeal, and Rad was able to beat Twitch EGWCR down in the lower bracket. They were both sent down, though, earlier in the day. I gotta just find here, SB lost to Diego B, and it was Rad who had a forfeit loss to Hugo. So that's, I think, is something that's really interesting about what we've seen so far today, is that there's these guys that have had forfeit losses, like Jupiter King, like Rad, where since the Tournament Hub is new, and since this is new for us as a format, I'm just kind of racking my brain for, I wonder what went wrong in those sets. Maybe they didn't accept the game in time, maybe they didn't submit in time, maybe they reused the card, whatever it is. But those are the people that sent them down. Hugo and Diego B were the ones that were able to beat SB and Rad in our group number 2.
Well, if they reuse the card, Andrew, I want to know how they did it. What type of
crazy I forget.
wizardry?
It's built in. We can't do that. So it's got to be just late accepts or something.
Yeah, it has to be. That, or just they found something more important to do, and or they just felt bad. They're like, you know what, you need it more than I do, so I'm going to go ahead and just give you the sacrificial win.
Yeah, which at this level, at this phase in the World Finals qualifiers, that's a pretty big gift. So just waiting here for our next round to start, guys. And like we said, it's all elimination games coming your way at the moment. The top 4 have been decided from each of their respective groups to give us that upper bracket top 16. And just to remind you guys who those are, I'm going to just run through them really quickly here. Pandora, Pedro TM, not ex-Pedro, Morton, and Trainer Toby. It was Trainer Toby who sent Surgical Goblin down below. Hugo, King Tico, Sweep, and Coffer Hubie from Group 2, all making it through. Sandbox, AirSurfer, IMJP, and Capgun from Group 3. And we'll say goodbye to AC. Rich and I are going to take over as we hop into SB versus Rad. And finally, the other 4 players are going to be Grieco, Cal Sub, Luminary, and KK. And here we go, Rich. SB top of your screen, Rad at the bottom, and SB a unicorn in the competitive Clash Royale world. He shows up, he wins tournaments, or he's just gone for a very long time.
SB is one of the most, is it enigmatic the correct word for the goofball that is SB. He's been in competitive Clash for a long time, played in CRL Asia. His profile picture for every game for a long time was him blowing a kiss to the camera. What a strange character overall, and also a transformation. He was a little butterball a couple of years ago, and now he looks like he's going to be playing the next James Bond. So SB, if you follow him on Twitter, it's just him razzing people and then posting gains in the gym.
Yeah, one of the greatest glow ups in Clash Royale history, and yeah, he is very fun to follow on Twitter. Funny guy and incredibly talented. You hear so many people in this scene talk about SB with so much respect because he's one of those players that you look at. He's like, what if he did just commit 8 hours a day? Every day for the last 4 years, would he be the consensus #1 player in the world? Well, we can't really say, but for how little SB plays, it's incredible how much he is able to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, if he played as much Clash Royale as he lifts, would he already be a world champion? Who knows? Either way, he's doing pretty well at both. Other side of things, though, one of our longtime favorites, a longtime fan favorite if you do follow the eastern scene of Clash Royale, Rad, who's seen it all as a competitive Clash Royale pro in CRL Asia and CRL East. And we're seeing him here one more time as part of this big Japanese contingent, making a pretty serious push to show up and join the defending world champion Mugi at World Finals.
Yeah, I mean, Rad, one of those guys that we've seen for so long, whether it was with Fav Gaming or with Ponos, a great person, one of the people that years ago kind of talked about as maybe could be one of the best, period, in that 1v1 set. Rad didn't quite accomplish that, but still has always been very relevant in the competitive scene. And you can see right now that Skarmy gets right on top of the tower, or excuse me, the Skeleton King army, whatever you want to call it, to get some great damage in. SB just not having the responses he needs, now down to 980. And when you're playing a Wall Breakers drill deck, you do not want to be that far in the hole this early on.
Well, I mean, look, you call him a walking graveyard or a Skarmy carrier. Either way, Skeleton King throwing a lot of skeletons there at you, but at the moment, it's the right-hand lane that's the concern for SB. 980 remaining on that tower. And they're just playing crosswise right now. Nice little lightning, a lot to take out a Dart Goblin, but the tower damage, no problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for SB right now is his only real great splash damage is that Skeleton King. But the Skeleton King is also one of the best ways for him to create pressure in that opposite lane. So now down to 499, 663. SB in a great spot there. And just a little bit of Fire Spirit pressure, but the Tombstone is already down. Now Drill going to be met by that Skeleton King. And now it's Rad who's trying to find a moment to get on offense. He goes aggressive at the bridge.
And going to be the high Inferno Tower late, picked up by the skeletons of that Tombstone. But no matter, Royal Giant not able to do its job either way. 346 on the right-hand side to 354. SB in a lot of trouble right now, has to create pressure and create it fast. Time is ticking away here. Hunter working on that one. Can the Fireball make enough room for the damage?
Oh, wow.
Goblins don't get it. And wow, Rad holding on here. Pressure opposite lane. Royal Giant not going to be able to get through here. I think SB comes out on top here.
He does. Fireball comes in. Great pressure in that right-hand side. And this is exactly what I'm talking about with SB. You know, it looked like he was in trouble for a while there. It looked like he wasn't able to create the offense he wanted. But then just being in control of his cycle, getting great pressure in both lanes, those Dart Goblins were getting so much value. And SB doing what SB does here in game number 1 against Rad.
Yeah, very, very nicely played here for SB, and man, he's staying in the hunt right now, so we'll see if he can keep it alive. Of course, has a long road still to make it back into the mix, but this is a good first step.
Yeah, and you can see both these guys very close in rank on ladder, 90 and 96. So as they've worked through the bracket and the seeding today, they find themselves basically with where they were at when they started. However, this is a much more important set. And both of them just pausing for a moment. Maybe going to see something a bit heavier.
Yeah, I got to go ahead and take that time here just for a little bit. And man, that tower was so darn close on that right-hand side for Rad. But,
yeah.
You know, if this were ladder, it would have been able to take out that 346. But at tower 11, the damage is only 317. So had to do a little bit more damage, just a hair more damage, to put that tower into lightning range. Could not quite get it done.
And that's, you know, again, you got to attribute that to SB and the pressure he was creating. He knew how close he was to being finished off, and it was just, all right, let me just pressure, and see if Rad will make mistakes. And SB got very lucky with that as he takes that game number 1 of this set, and still a stop and stare. Not something you see as often these days. I guess it's probably happening a little bit more than it maybe did last year. But in general, The stop and stare has not been as popular. Usually one card or two will be cycled, even if you are playing something heavier. We'll see what these guys want. In terms of heavy decks, it's been Royal Giant and Lava Hound all day today. Haven't seen any Electro Giant, haven't seen any Golem, at least on broadcast.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I'm not upset. I'm also not upset we haven't seen any Elixir Golem with the new rework there. Elixir Golem is back, at least in some fashion. And probably not going to see it from either of these guys, or probably from most of our competitors today, as a couple big bag of bones come down.
So looking like Drill for Rad, and
maybe Hog for SB.
Maybe. Cannon Cart comes down.
RG.
Royal Giant, opposite direction. Ewiz will go to work here. Drill to the same lane. Oh, Drill. Oh, but the nice job. The combo with the Ewiz to turn the Royal Giant back around. Very well played here by Rad.
Yeah, Rad only takes a little bit of damage there. 2276 to 2 untouched towers. SB going to do a little bit of the same. Take some damage on the left-hand side from that same Ewiz. And a late Fisherman comes down. We were all holding our breath for a moment there, and SB decides to take the King Tower activation.
And here we go. King Tower will get on, and not getting the damage, definitely preferable by a significant margin. Of course, King Tower activation not going to hurt at all. This is Drill, so that King Tower activation could become somewhat impactful as time goes on.
Yeah, I mean, even when you talk about those Royal Ghosts that sometimes late game you have to ignore that go opposite lane, that King Tower activation really, really helps, because a completely uncontested Royal Ghost can do work on your tower. And right now, SB fully in the driver's seat here, Rich. Rad just struggling to create offense, and I'm not a big fan of this deck. I know that it's popular, but I just miss the Magic Archer.
Yeah, this is fascinating. We've seen some Xe here and there a little bit lately. This deck, as you said, like Magic Archer is the real key here. But if you're expecting more Swarm, maybe the Executioner with that extended range could be helpful, and of course does get on tower a bit more than it used to before the recent balance change.
Yeah, it's one of those things now where you can NATO with that Xe, and you're kind of trying to pull off the same thing that you do with the Magic Archer, just in a different fashion. So I do understand why it's been kind of substituted out, but I'm just a person that prefers the Magic Archer, as I know you are as well.
Yeah.
As we see Rad trying to do everything he can to take that Royal Giant off the board, and still just trying to figure out how to create offense. And there you go. There's the Royal Ghost opposite lane. SB immediately responds.
Well, it's the speed that you get from 4 Elixir versus 5 for the Magic Archer, and then the fact that you don't necessarily need a NATO, right? You don't have to spend that extra 3. You don't have to make it an 8 Elixir spend to get tower damage. With that geometry, you can spend 4 and get significant tower damage. So that's why I like it better, but in a swarmy meta, you understand why in certain matchups the Executioner might perform better. And this Giant Skeleton just walking away on the right-hand side.
Wow.
This is not the tower that Rad's concerned with. So he's just going to try to find a way to get damage, but there does not seem to be any way to get enough damage in time to win this one.
No, and that tower now with the Giant Skeleton Bomb will be the lower of the two, does go down, and SB with the quick 2-0 over Rad. And,
wow.
Again, it's one of those things. It was almost like what I was talking about earlier with Michifu. I'm never surprised when SB wins. I'm really not. And honestly, I'm not really that surprised when he loses either, because he's just one of those guys where you'll see him go on these crazy runs, and then it almost feels like he's like, all right, I'm bored now. I'm going to go back to normal life, go back to lifting, whatever it is that he does, or go back to trolling on Twitter, which we love to see. But SB, also the other side of him is that he is an incredible competitive player when he's dialed in, and Rad just felt the wrath of the man from the UK.
I'm not surprised is probably the best way to put it. No matter what the result is for SB, you're not really surprised by it, and here we go, staying alive. And I want to go ahead and take a quick check here and see who SB will be playing against in the next round. So let me go ahead and get that information for you, because I know that we do know he'll be moving on forward. And it looks like SB, which bracket is he? I feel like he's on the last bracket that I looked at. And now I can't even figure out where he is.
He's in bracket 2, so he's going to play against Tech Uno, CR.
There we go.
Whoever that may be, one of the names that I don't recognize, but it was Sweep who 2-1'd Tech Uno to send him down. And so we'll see who is going to come out on top there. Still people alive in that same set are Lord Seb and Diego B and Francito.
Yeah, all those guys there in the lower bracket final. So a lot of those other 3 guys all waiting for their opponent. Let's go ahead and join Rocket and Titan. Remember, every match you see today from this point onward is an elimination match. So here we are in game number 2. Titan with the advantage both in terms of games won and damage. And a win here for Titan does move him on to the lower bracket final and a chance to move on to next weekend.
Yeah, he was sent down early in his day. He was a quick 0-2. And then he was able to beat Omar, Tatone was, and Leo Vargas. And he was 2-1 in both of those, so he's definitely been battling it out to get to where he is right now. Cal Rocket was sent down to the second round of the lower bracket, and that was done by our good friend Ender G, who fell to Morton late. So right now it is Tatone who is in the lead by a lot, 286 to 1056, and the spell power to take out that tower.
And
doesn't need it.
Whoa, mortar connection, GG, well played. Titan moves on, and he'll be playing against Line, the no-tilt world champion, for a shot at making the top 32. So again, top 32 does not put you into Worlds. We already have 6 of our 16 seats taken care of. Only 10 of these players overall make it, but top 32 guarantees you a piece of that prize pool, at least $3,000, and of course keeps you in the hunt to be one of those 10 players who join our 6 golden ticket winners for Worlds.
Yeah, you have our guys Mugi, Mohammed Light, Arden Toas against Aslan, all hanging out, waiting, and of course Samuel Basoto, who are sitting there with their golden tickets. Lucas X Gamer sitting back pretty, not worried right now. You see them, I saw some of the tweets earlier this morning. They just get to hang out, watch Clash Royale, which they love, and they don't have to worry about a thing. And here we go, Katashian and Keef. Keef, top of your screen, Katashian at the bottom, all tied up at 1, but my goodness, this already looks like it's gone horribly for Katashian, and this is kind of what you guys were talking about before. That Mother Witch gets value, and then you send in those piggies, and it looks like that's exactly what happened. It was a Royal Ghost, a Mother Witch that was then mirrored, and then Royal Hogs behind, and Katashian almost already out of this game.
And, you know, it's interesting to see Keef in this position, and we'll see if he does get past Kita here. This is game number 3. He's in a good spot, and he would move on to the lower bracket final. Chief Keef, now Humble Keef, was kind of the odd man in the mix last year in the top 32 for World Finals. If there was anyone who people thought was kind of the surprise entrant, it was Keef. He had an okay experience there, but would, of course, love to repeat that with another trip to World Finals here in 2022.
And Katashian just stuck between a rock and a hard place, opts to save Elixir, taking the damage because the one tower on the left-hand side was already so low, it didn't really matter if the right-hand side went just as low. And so now Humble Keef goes, cool, I'm going to try to take both your towers with these split piggies. And Katashian just in a world of hurt with just the start of this game. I mean, you can kind of see it all laid out with the way the cards were played. A Tombstone came down, Mother Witch got value off of it, a clone Mother Witch came out, probably when it was poisoned off the board or something, and then Royal Hogs came in, and it's basically all sewn up.
Yeah, and if Keef does win here, he will play against the other interesting entrant to last year's World Finals, Francito, who ended up, and looks like this is going to be a GG well played here. Katashian has to know this is game over. Early unfortunate exit here for Kita. But, man, yeah, so now we're going to see sort of the 2 most interesting world finalists from last year. Chief Keef will take on Francito to see who stays in the mix.
I got to say, the thing that I am most devastated about is that Katashian's picture is now going to be gone, because I loved that profile picture that he just had there, having a little bit of fun with it. And also, I've always been a big fan of watching him play. But, you know, when you talk about Humble Keef and Francito and their kind of journey they took last year, and like you said, kind of being the odd ducks or the odd mans out at World Finals, now a year later on, that consistency has paid off, right? They weren't able to get the golden ticket, but only 6 people in the entire world out of millions of people that tried to get that golden ticket were able to. But to see them where they are here in Stage 3, working towards the end of the day, great stuff. And as our producer is looking for more matches, Rich, it's because it's becoming harder to find. We are eliminating players left and right. Only a handful of players still remain here, and I'm going to do the same thing you've been doing. I'm going to check in with these brackets and see where we're at. Maybe AC will have some fun stuff for us in a minute. What's that?
We are getting really low here on this list. So there's only, we only have, I think, 32 players, maybe 1 or 2 more left in the lower bracket. So we're going to get down to our lower bracket top 16. We've gone from 128 now down to about less than 50 players so far today.
Wallace eliminated.
Oh.
Michifu, eliminated. Demus,
Shame.
eliminated. Asaf, eliminated. Crazy, crazy stuff there. You look at Group 4 in the lower bracket, and big names have just been dropping left and right. And then you flash forward a couple of years ago, that same group, you know, we saw Guanic be eliminated early on. Adrian Piedra just got eliminated. Hosseil eliminated. Calmateja eliminated. So just wow. This is what the summer qualifier, this is what Clash Royale League World Finals is all about, man. You got to be that 1%, that top 0.01% to stay alive.
I did see someone in the Twitch chat ask if Morten is still in. Yes, Morten has already qualified for next weekend, so Morten's still in the mix. We're going to go ahead and join our final match of the round 3 lower bracket to get all the way to our top 32 here. And then we will have all of our final elimination matches set and ready to rock for the end. And Belvinus versus Gabo.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the same. Let me go ahead and see if I can figure that out, if that is the same original Gabo or not.
Are you talking about the coach, Kiki Gabo, that thing?
No, well, that was the duo.
Yeah.
I don't think this is the same Gabo.
Yeah, he looks very, very young. So probably just a newer competitive with the same name. I'm glad you cleared that up because I've also always been curious, and I for some reason, it's been one of those things I've missed. Royal Giant will get that shot in right there. You can see everything coming down for Belvinus, but just not enough defense as Gabo eliminates Belvinus CR. Apparently he's on YouTube. Check him out as he had a nice run here today, but it does come to an end.
And now you see, new Gabo will move on.
New Gabo.
New Gabo. And we have some interesting matchups here in the lower bracket final. Most likely, I think we might check out Surgical Goblin's matchup because it isn't it's whether he goes on or not. Surgical Goblin against Diego 94. But also in these lower bracket, elimination matchups, some marquee ones here, as we mentioned, Francito versus Keef, Diego B and Bancito. So we'll either have 1, 2, or no Team Liquid world titleists moving on to the next one. SB, as we mentioned earlier, still in the mix for this one. But another really interesting one that we're talking about being an elimination match of who gets to go on, Surge TS against Adriel.
Yeah.
That is a fascinating one. For us to maybe take a look at.
Right below that, Rich, is Yuya and Viper, and that's a huge one as well. Let's bring AC back on. Josh, talk to us, man. You can dealer's choice. You want to talk about what action we've seen, or you want to talk about what matchups we have coming our way, or players that have been eliminated? It's all on you, man.
Oh, man, I have so much to talk about. Okay, let's go with, it's, okay, yeah. As you can tell, this is difficult.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah, okay, so how do I compartmentalize this? Let's see. Asaf got knocked out 0-2 to Doom, so we're going to see Doom against Codigo. That's going to be a fantastic matchup.
Yeah.
Demas got knocked out by Vitor. That was something else. And then we're going to see Boss. Who is Boss going against?
Nicoko.
Boss? Okay, yeah. That's going to be the match that I really want to be looking at, just because, I mean, obviously, I've known Boss for a long time. It's amazing seeing one of the few Americans left that's, like, really still holding the talent level with everybody else. And, yeah, I just want to see him succeed. So I'm very excited to see if he will be able to make it past this stage 3.
Well, we've got time right now, so I want to have some fun here, guys, just because we can. Let's go through some of these matchups and just pick. We got Ender versus Betfus. I'm going Betfus in that matchup.
You know what? I'm gonna go Ender solely, not because of like any research or reasoning that makes sense. But he did really well against Morten, so I think he's got it this time.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my take too here. Betfus Heart Expo, Rich not Heart Expo, Rich vote Ender.
We got Surgical Goblin and Diego 94. I'm going Surgical Goblin on this one. Whether it's because I want him to win or because I think he's going to win, I'm going with the GOAT.
Yeah, there's no place in my heart where I can vote against him, Surge.
Yep, and I have a feeling we'll be watching that one because we got to see if Surgical Goblin goes through to the next round or not. So that's a consensus on Surgical Goblin. Andrew, the next one, Line versus Titan. And I'll take the lead here on this one. Titan's surging. People are picking Titan to do well, but it's hard for me to bet against Line. I'm going to go with Line here.
Okay, I'm gonna say Line 100%.
Really?
Yeah, 100%. I love Line's gameplay. He's so focused. I definitely lean towards him.
Well, then you guys know what I'm going to pick just because I can. If I'm the only person, doing it against Surgical Goblin is one thing, but I'm going to go with Tatone then. I'm going to go with Titan, however you want to say it. I like a lot of what I've seen over him over the last month and a half of gameplay. It didn't get him a golden ticket. It didn't get him a top finish, but I have liked what I've seen. I'm going to go with him for that, for that matchup. Tatone, you're my boy. I've got faith in you.
Pram versus Gabo, not Gabo. I don't know if any of us have any context on who the favorite is in that matchup.
No, and I think this might be that one matchup where we don't really know the player. So I'm gonna go with new Gabo on this one.
And as a quick update from that's the matches in Group A. The qualifiers who've already made it through from Group A: Trainer Toby, who beat Surgical Goblin; Morton with his win over Ender; Pedro, who beat Pram; and Pandora, who's all the way through from Group A. Moving on to Group B, the players who've already qualified from Group B for next weekend: Hugo, King Tico, Sweep, who I see in the chat there on Twitch. Shout out to Sweep, and Kafir Hubi, who've all moved on there. Let's go ahead and talk about our matchups, though. The first one...
Sorry, really quickly, Rich, I just wanted to say, so it looks like there's probably 2 people then, maybe, out of the people that have qualified that I don't recognize. Because I don't... there's Trainer Toby, who I don't know, and then the other person is in the final group. It's Luminary, who I actually have seen that name before, but I'd say everyone else, to answer our question that we asked ourselves before the broadcast started, I recognize everyone else that's qualified so far.
Well, let's talk about the guy, and that's a good point, because we still have a couple of people who also will be maybe outside qualifiers here for our top 32. Of course, only 10 make it all the way through. Let's hit those Group B conversations, though. First up, Francito and Keef. I got to take Fram here. He looked nasty last year during World Finals, had a really deep run. No knock on Keef. I'm taking Fram in the first matchup.
I think I'm with you on that one. I don't know why. I just have like a gut feeling. I'm also going Francito.
I'm going to agree with you guys because I actually didn't hear the question.
Francito versus Keef.
And what did you guys choose?
We both chose
Francito.
Fram.
All right, I'm still sticking with Francito. Because
What are you playing a game over there?
No.
What are you doing?
So there's a reason for this.
Are you painting again?
No.
Show them your painting, Josh.
Am I actually doing this?
I mean,
You got it.
Why not?
Okay, so one thing first, I follow Luminary on Twitter, so I do recognize him.
Okay. Just to give everyone some context, Josh told us that this was a Bob Ross attempt. And if you guys don't know who Bob Ross is, because you're not old like Rich and I, he's one of the greatest nature painters of all time back on PBS. And Josh, I think he was going for a mountain, maybe with a stream coming out of it, but it looked like he just...
A jellyfish?
Yeah, so the idea was mountain range up top, and then a house with some trees on the left.
Wow,
and I
adding in a
forgot
house.
Yeah, no. When I told you it was a 45-minute video, I was probably 45 minutes into painting, and I was 3.5 minutes into the video. I just paused it and kept painting away. Now, the thing is, it really isn't my fault necessarily.
I think you're hurting Rich's brain right now.
No, I bought the wrong paint. I think it's supposed to be something along the lines of like acrylic and some other form of paint, and I bought the wrong one. So when I do my second attempt, I will have the right painting supplies and I will have a different finished product.
Well, I've
heard the paint is the problem. I've heard that a lot from the artists.
The viewers are at the edge of their seats right now, I'm sure, wondering. And you know what? If you watch Clash Royale League broadcasts and you watch these pros play and you feel bad, you're like, man, there's just no way I can ever be that good. Go watch Bob Ross paint, and you'll feel even worse about yourself, because what that guy can do in 30 minutes and how quickly, like you said, AC, you fall behind, it's very similar to watching pros play Clash and going, I have no idea how they knew that was coming. I have no idea how they knew how to counter that, whatever it may be. So we are waiting for one of our final rounds to start. I mean, there's only really a few more rounds left before we say goodbye to our viewers today. And you know, we'll be back next week and the week after that. We'll be back basically for the rest of the run here throughout for the until the end of September.
Speaking of falling behind, Andrew, let's see who we vote will fall behind in our next few matchups. Diego B versus Francito. Anyone here have an immediate response on a vote for that one?
I mean, you can't ever vote against Diego B. If he's back in the mix, he's back to streaming. He looks motivated again, and you just love the dude. He's a good dude.
Josh, can you vote against Diego B?
I absolutely not. I still text him. Like, we still have a great relationship, and I would never be able to. I would sooner vote against my mom in some form of competition than vote against Diego B.
You vote against your mom in a mom contest?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll say it.
Yeah, Diego B. If you played CR, if you were involved in CRL in the past, you've probably gotten a DM or a text from Diego B being like, "Hey, what's up, brother? How you doing?" In the last couple of years. Let's see, Lord Seb versus Champagne Poppy and Takuno versus SB. Let's get some quick votes in there.
I'm going with Drake and I'm going with SB. That's the way I'm going. Champagne Poppy and SB. I actually think that Lord Seb will win, but I just wanted to make that. I'll just stop talking. I'm going with Seb and SB.
Josh?
Let's see, Seb and I always have to go with SB. Something about him, he just wins. I was actually shocked. I mean, like you guys said that you can never be shocked with the result. I was slightly shocked that we saw SB win, and so I think we're gonna see it again. And then on the other side, I have to go with Lord Seb. I think it is gonna be Seb gonna be running away with this one.
Great picks, and I'll second those ones. Let's go ahead into Group 3 here. Here's some of the hard ones.
Yeah.
Surge TS versus Adriel. That one is that's a banger of a matchup.
That is a really great. I mean, that's a World Finals caliber matchup right there. I maybe go Adriel. Not even because it's anything against Surge. I think he's an exciting player, and I've been seeing him play a lot. I've been seeing him practice with a lot of the pros on my friends lists. I like the kid. I'm going with him.
And I'm gonna go with Surge TS. Every time I watch him, I'm pleasantly surprised by the level of gameplay that I see, and he always makes one or two plays where I kind of think he's one of the only players who would make that play. And so I have to go Surge TS.
Josh going with the guy who's giving him all the best Twitter tips
Yeah.
for Clash Royale this year, so I feel you. I'm gonna pick Surge TS here as well, just because I it's one of those things where Adriel last year looked like he was the next thing this year, and I'm not convinced. So this is the chance. Adriel wins here. Adriel convinced me, and I'm on the train.
Yeah, I think that's super fair. I think the next one is really interesting because you have one player in Yuya who's been really exceptional for a while. It's a name that we all know well, but then the other guy, Viper, it feels wrong if Viper doesn't make it to next weekend, and it also feels wrong if Viper's not at World Finals, and we've been saying that since the beginning of the year. It feels like he has to be there, but it's not guaranteed, and he doesn't have the points, right? Like last year, you could see it coming for a while. It's like, all right, these guys are probably 100% going to be there. Viper could just not make it. This is a big one. Yuya versus Viper. What do you guys got?
I have to pick Viper because he's just been. I mean, look, that's a big question, right? Like, where's the stress level? The Viper's 2022 could be summed up as always a bridesmaid and never a bride.
Yep.
This dude has gotten so close over and over and over. And how many times did we talk about, like, is this one Viper's tournament? Is this Viper's tournament? He was always right there. I just have to go with Viper. I mean, I do think that overall I rate him a little bit higher than Yuya. Not that Yuya is not rated very high, but I do rate him a little bit higher. But also just like Viper has to get it, like you said.
Josh?
I don't know. It feels sick saying this, but I really have to lean towards Yuya.
Really?
And yeah, I mean, Yuya's talented, and it just feels like it feels like things just go wrong for Viper. It's that gut feeling where I just think he's going to get that bad matchup in game number 3, and he's going to lose. It's just a gut feeling.
Yeah, I mean, deck choice has always been one of those conversations with Viper, and it feels like he's been maybe a little bit better with diversifying. He's maybe locked down a couple more win conditions, and I do wonder if the buff to Executioner has changed his life at all. I mean, he's a big Hog Xe NATO guy. We've only seen him play it a couple times in competitive, but you wonder if that buff to a card that no one knows as well as him actually is a factor. So I guess we'll find out with that. Boss and Nicoko, how about that one? Nicoko, a name that we've seen a few times more this year, popping up later on in tournaments, whereas Boss is just, I mean, he's Boss, right? It's a tough one.
I'm not picking against Boss. Nicoko might on paper be the better player here, but Boss is again another guy who just like he's been I think 5 is his best finish on ladder if I remember correctly. Off the top of my head here, Boss is a guy who's just been very, very close, and I don't know what Boss's plan is after 2022. He's got a successful content creation career going, but there's only so many times someone can go through the competitive ringer. I feel like this is Boss's moment right now.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I have to agree. I'm definitely not rooting, like, I have to root for Boss, and I'm okay with that. I'm going to go Boss.
Yeah, I don't think I could pick against him either. The last one, I don't know if you guys know Cal Dudu or Knocked Knight. I don't know if you guys want to weigh in on that. I mean, Cal has had a ton of players in the competition all year long, and especially today. So, you know, they seem to have a very good squad, or at least roster. So maybe that's a favor there. Let's go to the next one. Codigo versus Doom. That's an interesting one because, you know, Doom's one of those names out there that we've been seeing be more and more successful, whereas Codigo is just a name. Once again, kind of that Nicoko Boss conversation. How are you guys feeling about that? Oh, never mind.
Well, we'll go ahead and we'll give some answers on that one, but we're going to go ahead and say bye to Andrew here as we get into our game very shortly here. Looks like we'll have it ready in just a moment. But he did pose that question, Josh. I'm going to pick Codigo in that matchup.
I have to go Codigo as well. I actually really am appreciative of Doom. Doom has actually done a 2-hour training lesson with me, I think 2.5 years back. And so always going to be thankful to him for that. But I do have to lean towards Codigo in this one.
And nice little King Tower activation here for Surgical Goblin. And remember, folks, this is a win or go home matchup. One of these two will move on, stay in the hunt for World Finals. The other one will take an unceremonious exit. Very, very close to, but not quite there. So we'll see. This is that big question here. Does the legacy of Surgical Goblin add one more piece to that crazy, crazy run that he's been on for so many years, or is this sort of the end of that road?
Yeah, and right here, this could be a fantastic start to game number 1. Skeleton King will come down, but that Ghost is going to get the left tower all the way down to 1500 HP. It's whacking on top of it, 1694, all the way down to 1433. Great start for Surgical, and this deck is continuing to dominate.
Yeah, Ghost does a lot there, but I mean, imagine being Diego, you're running Bats, Skarmy, Skeleton King, and you see the Mother Witch mirror deck. That's just got to be brutally disheartening.
Absolutely. Never something you want to be seeing, especially from a player like Surgical. He's going to recognize what you have in cycle and what you want to be playing in every single moment right here. And Surgical has always been good at recognizing when to reset, when to set up, when to attack, when to defend. And right here we see it. Giant Skeleton all the way in the back, just trying to set up one more defense before he tries to do anything with it. Fisherman is going to come down, and I can't wait to see the Mother Witch get its value.
Quick update for you. Adriel is currently 1 game up on Surge TS as they go into game number 2. If you guys want to keep an eye on the results from that matchup, I'll update you more as we continue through there. But right now we're in the final 20 seconds or so of regulation time. Surgical Goblin has looked completely in control for these first 3 minutes.
Yeah, and this is another, and we see the Miner forced out because the Bats would have walked in front, but this is the problem when you go against this deck. Again, we see another Mother Witch come down onto the board. It is going to be able to take out the Miner, take out part of the Skeleton King, but now we have the left side to worry about. I mean, this is just the problem, and this is why Royal Hogs are so exciting. you just have so much pressure all the time.
And look at the patience there for Surgical Goblin just to not be worried about that Skeleton King doing any more work on that left-hand side. And that's what we've seen from some top players. You talk about that Morton-Ender matchup that happened off-stream. I was watching that as I wasn't on the broadcast at the time. And the amount of damage that Morton took on off towers to set up his offense was frankly astounding. So you see Surgical Goblin there choosing to eat a little bit as well to support the offensive play. We'll see if he maintains this lead or takes a tower here with a minute 15 remaining.
Yeah, and I love right here, Surgical continues to go into both lanes, and that's exactly what you want to be seeing. You need to, at this point, you have the game locked up as long as you don't overextend. So what do? You just Giant Skeleton in the back, you Royal Hogs on offense, and you arrows whenever you get the right amount of value. But at the same time, you don't even need the arrows because you're just trying to set up Mother Witches. Every answer that Surgical does is the correct one, and that's why these are the kind of matchups that are just so miserable when you're on the Minor Mortar side.
A lot of damage on that right-hand side potentially coming in, though. We have Scar Me down. Now arrows do some cleanup work. Miner goes behind the Giant Skeleton, gets turned around by the Zappy. Snowball not going to make much in the way of room here. Mortar looking for a connection with 30 seconds left. Pigs go to the left-hand lane. Mortar on defense, and this should be enough to sew up game number 1 for Surgical Goblin.
We do see the double arrows coming out, 82 HP, as long as he defends this properly, or even just sort of okay. He will be fine. Arrows are going to come out shortly. There they are, and the game is wrapped up. A great game number 1 for Surge.
1 game away from staying alive here and making his way into the prize pool, potentially, with that top 32 placement. Of course, we already have 6, so it'll be top 36 placement. Still enough to get a little chunk of the money here, though. And as an update, Adriel has just finished off Surge TS, a clean 2-0 for Adriel. So making a few of us, including myself, eat our words that time around. Adriel now has guaranteed himself a spot in next weekend.
I won't apologize for being wrong, but man, I thought I was going to be right.
Right, so a little slower start here.
Oh, yeah, and right there gets the cannon cart timing. I always love seeing that. It's always those not flashy but kind of flashy plays that really get me excited for Clash Royale. And right there, cannon carts late. The Magic Archer does walk into the tower's range, but it is focused on top of the cannon cart instead of the tower. Just a difficult, but the pros make it look so easy play. And 1 minute in, and his towers are perfectly healthy because of that play.
It's a very interesting little mirror match we have on our hands here after that game number 1. And notice both players opting for the Magic Archer variation of this very popular deck. And the Knight does get the dash, but does not chain to tower.
Cannon cart is placed, and the Magic Archer will not walk into the tower range, but that's okay. The cannon cart's still going to get the value he needs to get. He needs to get the Magic Archer, and he needs to stay, the cannon cart needs to stay alive just long enough to take that shield. That interaction always happens that way. The cannon carts will take each other out as long as the cannon cart has, 20% health on its shield. But the cannon cart on Diego's side is going to be able to make one last stand and take out the opposing AWIZ.
Another update for you of off-stream matches. Vitor has beaten Yakitori, so Vitor will be appearing next weekend as you see Diego94 get some nice geometry and defend that Magic Archer for some good damage. Now the first significant chunk taken here as we reach the final minute of regulation play.
And so this is where the difference... Actually, this is the reason why some players are, trying to use that Giant Skeleton Royal Hogs deck, and this is why some players aren't totally convinced by it, because one side, you're going to have the Ghost with this ultra-powerful drill deck, and on the other side, you do have to use the Dark Prince, and the Ghost is so important in this matchup.
And there we go with the nice pickup at the bridge here. Surgical Goblin not quite getting the lead back, but able to put some damage here. And Hearing now that sad one for you there, Josh. SB falls to Takuno, so SB will not be moving on. Nice King Tower activation for the former world champion, as Surgical Goblin now gets the right-hand tower down to 21-31, but does have the King Tower activation.
Yeah, beautiful NATO to take the Goblin all the way to the King Tower. But right here, 700 HP separating the two players, and just complete domination from Diego so far in this game. I don't know what he needs to do to, stop this overall momentum from Diego, but something absolutely needs to change. He needs to get more aggressive. He needs to get less aggressive. He needs to control, not control. Something needs to change in this overall match.
Well, there's two big things in this mirror match, right? One is winning the Magic Archer battle, right? And so far, Diego94 has done a little bit more with that Magic Archer battle. And the other thing that we saw here, and this is going to be about the biggest game changer on who can get it done right in that final minute, we saw Surgical Goblin attempt to do the NATO Golden Knight chain to tower. It didn't happen. He got some Magic Archer damage, but I would not be surprised to see the final minute of this one decided by a big chained Golden Knight attack.
Yeah, and right here, attempts to do it again, but is not going to work. The Dark Prince will be placed on top of that. Is a Ghost getting the splash? I think he got the splash on top of the tower and the Dark Prince, and another Golden Knight on top of the tower. You're right, it has everything to do with how these Golden Knights are getting damage.
Golden Knights and Magic Archers. Drill's the win condition, but Golden Knights and Magic Archers really drive a lot of the matchups for this deck, and we're seeing that right now. 30 seconds left. Surge being forced to spend a lot here directly at the bridge, and you have to play high a lot. We might see a good NATO Golden Knight dash here, but doesn't get it in. It's I don't know if that was the the NATO being placed a little bit off, or if it was that the drill blocked the pullback a little bit. But if that Golden Knight had connected, we might be seeing the lead for Surgical Goblin here. Instead, it's going to be opposite direction. Diego94 ties things up. We're going to game number 3.
Yeah, that was a great game from Diego. And right here, we are hearing Codigo was eliminated by Doom. So Codigo will not be able to advance to the next stage. Unfortunate for him. But yeah, game number 2. That was definitely an outplay. I feel like Diego definitely played better than Surgical in game number 2.
So here we go, game number 3. Keep in mind that Surgical Goblin did not play a champion in game number 1, I believe. Looks like he's going bait here in game 3, and Diego has the log. He'll be happy about that in this matchup. Some other updates as we're early here. Lord Seb taking out Champagne Poppy, so Drake not going on. Bancito 2-0ing Diego B, so Diego B now out of our World Finals hunt.
And right here, this is why bait decks are so obnoxious to every single player in the community. Diego had played 2 cards, and Surgical was already back to the second barrel.
Dark Prince controlled up high. Dark Goblin going to go to work here. Fish Boy will get some damage on tower, or will attach the tower, does not go all the way on. And here we go, the big old bait push. Yeah, this bait variation, I don't know if there's any. It looked for a long time that the deck that was benefiting the most from the introduction of champions for a long time was Hog EQ. Obviously, Hog EQ not quite as popular. I don't know if there's any deck that benefits from champions as much right now as bait does.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really, it just works so well with the Mighty Miner. It's awesome because I've seen Mighty Miner be used with the Graveyard, and at the same time, I've seen a lot of losses with Graveyard. It works, but I don't think Graveyard is overall that powerful, and it's because we're seeing so many Mother Witches, so many, direct answers, direct responses to the Graveyards. But yeah, you're 100% right. Mighty Miner plus the Goblin Barrel, it's just so powerful when they are paired together.
And this is just a filthy variation too. Surge not just going with the variation of bait that has the Mighty Miner to shut down Royal Giant pushes. He also has the Inferno Tower, so you can see that he's not going to get back around to the Mighty Miner here. Doesn't really need to. He's going to take, I think, 2 shots, though, from this Royal Giant. Maybe a third gets in. No, it doesn't. Lead just barely going back to Diego94. as we go into the final 30 seconds of regulation.
Right there, it's whether or not he can protect this Inferno Tower. Can the Inferno Tower take out the Dark Prince before it gets the swing? That means that Diego has to wait another 30 seconds before he can go in with another push. And right there, electing to use the Fireball on top of the tower, he's going to forget about using the RG for a bit. He just wants to get the damage on top of the tower. And that's going to allow for a rocket in response from Surgical. And Surgical will come roaring back and taking the lead.
That's a big rocket. He should be back to Inferno Tower here. Does get the Inferno Tower down. Log to go to work against that Goblin barrel. RG does go down. Fireball takes out the Dark Goblin. Here we are in sudden death overtime. Things still very tight, 1389 to 1417.
Yeah, and now that we're heading into late double elixir, almost into triple elixir, we see the Fire Spirits at the bridge forcing out the Mega Minions in response. Just a great situation for Surgical. If he doesn't overextend, he should be able to continue to apply pressure, have the opportunity to, get that one good defense with, the one good offensive pressure, and he should be able to win this game.
Wow, look at the patience out of Surgical Goblin on the right-hand side. Didn't get the Inferno Tower down too early. Instead, knew he had the pressure on the left-hand side with that Mighty Miner. Got in a Goblin barrel push, and look at how much he's extended that lead now. We are very close to a Surgical Goblin win. Just has to hold on and not make any mistakes here in this final minute.
Yeah, this is going to be brilliant defense. We see the Log getting its value on defense, but also getting the value on offense. Rocket is going to come down 437 to nothing. Surgical is going to advance stages.
That was a brilliant sequence of play at the end there. You saw Surgical Goblin just measure. And I think that's we talk about the mark of a veteran there. He let that game stay kind of tight early on, measured that moment, and struck right at the exact right time. So brilliant sequence there from Surgical Goblin. He will be going on to our top 32. He will be back next weekend. And we have two of the biggest names in the history of Clash Royale who maybe at some point could meet again. Morten and Surgical Goblin both moving on today.
That's absolutely correct, and that's so exciting to think about. And it's crazy because if you told me that, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, I would have said Surgical. What are you thinking? That he hasn't done anything in competitive recently, but somehow he still has it. Turns out if you were the consensus #1 overall, the GOAT for so long, still considered the GOAT by many, it's kind of easy to come back.
Let's go ahead and have Andrew come back and join the desk here for a minute. Andrew, yeah, I know we got to give it up, man. Yeah. Surgical Goblin moving on to our next stage.
He's back, man. It's so good to see it. It's one of those things where Mohamed Light has been the consensus best player in the world for, I'd say, basically 2 full years now. I think last year there was a lot of maybe convincing those few stragglers, and then I think in 2022 it was literally just everyone in the world, unless you wanted to be a contrarian, were saying that it was Mohamed Light. If Surgical Goblin wins the World Championship in 2019, retires for 2 years, and then comes back and is able to even place in the top maybe 3 to 5 at this year's World Finals, I honestly think that conversation just screams right back into everyone's mind of who is the GOAT, and I love to see it. Rich, you broke it down perfectly. A sign of greatness is the composure, the poise, and that waiting to strike. Ruben was someone that kind of made it a true gameplay style where he would turn any deck into bridge spam late, but watching Surgical pick and choose his moments there was just beautiful stuff to see.
And we do have a few more of these qualifier elimination best of 3s coming up next. Line and Titan. So This is going to be a big one. A lot of players been talking about how Titan, they were picking Titan as a potential world finalist. Kind of some good Twitter debates around that one. But he's going up against Line, who, as we've said before, is a former world champion, not of CRL, but of the No Tilt World Championship.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about experience there, and it really does feel like Line has Tatone Titan beaten because, you know, like Titan's one of those guys you've been talking about more in 2022, whereas Line has been a name for a while. And, you know, I think one thing that's also interesting is when you look at some of these moments, especially like in Diego 94 versus Surgical Goblin, is I haven't seen the lights really get to many people. It doesn't seem like nerves have been super relevant in terms of seeing like glaring mistakes. It's just been kind of like small things here and there, you know, and even in that mirror matchup, which is really tough, Diego 94 played it really, really well. And like AC said, you know, Josh, you said it, he just straight out played Surge in game number 2.
Yeah, and it wasn't necessarily just, yeah, you're 100% right. Like, it's not a lot of mistakes. It's like missed opportunities sometimes with the Golden Knight dash, but not a lot of mistakes.
All right, we're going to hop into the game here. Rich, we're going to say goodbye to you as we hop into a game here between these two players trying to stay alive, Line and Tatone. And this is a tough one because, yeah, like we were just breaking down for you guys, Line has the experience, Tatone has the momentum. Here we go, game 1, best of 3.
And Line is going to be using the Giant Skeleton Mirror. We do see the NATO and the Inferno Tower and the log at a cycle.
Yeah.
So a great use of the mirror. And that's going to get the tower down to 1634. Almost can't get my sentences out because it's just so comical to see a mirrored Royal Hog be so effective so early on in this game.
And a bit of a blessing there by the Clash Royale gods that Golden Knight does chain onto the tower. And yeah, it was kind of a fascinating moment when you looked at Mohammed Light as one of the guys that started running mirrored Royal Hogs when Mirror was first kind of rebalanced. And it was like, wow, this is stupid strong. And then you fast forward to the 20-win challenge, and people are like, well, what are the strongest decks or strongest cards in the entire meta? Well, Zappies, Mother Witch, Royal Ghost, I guess Giant Skeleton and Mirror, so let's just put them all together in one deck, and it's become just slightly the bane of my existence, but it's also a fun deck to play. If you're struggling on ladder and grand challenges, this deck is very strong for a reason.
Right there, the Royal Hogs are still going to be dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, something about those level 13 Royal Hogs, when they get onto your tower, it doesn't matter if they have just one singular HP, just one hit from that snout just gets so much damage, especially when all 4 of them are putting in work. So 24-22 to 13-67, we see the offensive pressure. This is why this deck is so powerful. He does get the Inferno Tower to lock on the Giant Skeleton, but even still, this is so much pressure. And I mean, you're spamming everything at the bridge. You shouldn't be able to apply that much pressure with that kind of offensive move.
Yeah, I mean, and you even saw the negative elixir trade with those mirrored Royal Hogs, you know, or I guess even trade, but the damage goes in favor of Line, but a NATO, a log, and a Fire Spirit all came down, and Line still got damage. So 6 for 6, but damage going to 1 makes it a pretty frustrating moment there for Tatone. And Line decides to just mirror that Giant Skeleton in the weaker of his 2 lanes, as we are just ticking into overtime. 2 minutes remain.
Yeah, and right here, I love what both players are doing. So, you know, Line is recognizing that Tatone is starting to recover, and he's starting to defend properly, and he's not going to be able to get through. So what does he do? He just switches everything up. He goes in with a double Giant Skeleton. How does he want to, you know, start his offensive pushes? And right there, a great Golden Knight. I mean, both players are excelling right now and just making masterful plays after masterful plays.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if and when Line decides to mirror his arrows to take care of the Magic Archer, because right now the Magic Archer has been a lot of trouble, and the same Magic Archer, a lot of value on defense, gets a couple shots on tower, Goblins get stabs in because that Magic Archer has to be tended to, and just like that, this game swings back heavily in favor of Tatone. 7:23 remaining for Line as another Giant Skeleton is mirrored in the back. Tatone responds with the Golden Knight of his own.
Yeah, this is so gorgeous from Tatone. Line has been given no opportunities to go in on offense. We do see the Ghost on top, but this log is going to get a lot of value, especially when he combines that with the NATO. This is going to be it. It's can he get past this defense? This is where it counts.
Yeah, everything piled up there. Giant Skeleton up front, just like you need. Bomb does come down, but units are there to respond. Although the Royal Ghost sneaking in does not get a shot. 27 seconds remain. Line still in it. And high Royal Hogs get turned around. That will line up a Magic Archer shot. And that was absolute domination by Titone about halfway through that game. Once we started getting into overtime, Titone was in the driver's seat. AC, that was a beautiful turnaround.
That was just so gorgeous. I mean, just brilliant play after brilliant play. Everything was done so well. The Magic Archer's on offense. The Magic Archer's on defense. When is he supposed to log? When is he supposed to NATO with his drill? Everything was so calculated. And, I mean, he was making the right play each time while also switching up his offensive pushes. So when his opponent had the Ghost, he was getting the log timing where the Ghost was getting pushed off as the drill was dying. He was getting the NATOs off, you know, when he needed to pair it with a Magic Archer. That was so special from Titone.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the difficulties with that deck that Lion was playing. You see a lot of people kind of favoring it because it is so dominant, but one of the issues is since the deck is so new, you probably haven't played through 1,000,001 matchups like you have with every other deck. And it really seemed like at one moment, Lion just ran into a wall and had no idea how to break through it. Whereas Titone, playing a deck maybe a little bit more used, a little bit more popular, he goes, okay, I know how to adapt. I know how to play through this matchup. People have been playing this a lot over the last month, and I know how to pick it apart. Whereas Lion was just like, I don't know what to mirror. I don't know when to send. The Royal Hogs aren't getting enough value. The Giant Skeleton isn't getting enough value. And maybe Lion upset from game number 1, responding emphatically here in game number 2. That's going to be a 3-crown. Titone just putting down his phone. And we are going to a very quick game number 3. I mean, I felt like I barely even got to describe what went wrong in game number 1 for Lion before he took all 3 towers there in game 2.
I have never felt so rushed to get out a thought or even just think in general. That game number 2 was over just like that. I mean, a great game from Lion. And really, this is that felt like a game that rewarded tilting. And I don't know if I've ever seen that in competitive. I've never seen the Inferno Dragon be played for the 3-crown within the first 2 minutes of a game in a comp match.
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe one of those moments where you have a ladder game and you go down to the wire. It's down, you tick down to 0 seconds remaining. You lose by 3 HP. And then you go tilted right back into your next ladder game. And the Clash Royale gods just give you someone that isn't there. So it's just a free win. And then they suck you right back in. Feels like that's what happened to Lion here. Probably feeling a little defeated after game 1. Titone goes, hey, no problem, man. Here's a 3-crown. We're all even here in game number 3.
I love this because I had a thought earlier. It was I forgot who Rich was talking about, but he was talking about somebody trying to do something for Rich, and I was thinking, no, he probably was probably wasn't having that thought process. Really, he was probably just winning for himself. And right there, I don't know if Titone was that nice of a guy.
Hey man, don't take it away from us up here. You know how few wins we get. As Lion here early on in this game gets another tower down, just hyper aggressive. He sees the Lava Hound come down, knows how to create pressure. Titone here kind of caught in 2 separate lanes. He goes Balloon on the left as the Lava Hound chips away on the right. And no response from Lion. I mean, no elixir in hand because of the high AQ. And pretty nice recognition there by Titone.
Yeah, Lion specializes in oddly played games. Both of his towers are starting to get somewhat weaker. But on the flip side, he's done a lot of damage to the left side and a lot of damage to the right. Getting the right crown tower completely disappeared. And 683 to the left side crown tower. Titone in a very difficult spot. Lava Loon, you would think would specialize in these kind of oddly played games. But really, that's where Ram Rider really specializes. These Mega Knight decks just have so much value once it's in these weird spots where you're just taking towers.
Yeah, and there's just so many different ways to attack with this MK deck. You see there, Ram Rider set up in the back, MK plus guards in the pocket, and that's another 3 crown. 2 back-to-back 3 crowns for line. So he says, all right, man, you can have game number 1. I'm going to take 6 crowns from you over games 2 and games 3 to Tone. Not moving on to next weekend. The line still alive, and honestly, not a huge surprise there. You guys both had him picked. I went with Titone, and he was not able to put things together in games 2 or 3. I mean, AC game 2 and I guess kind of game 3, but more so game 2, they went off the rails so quickly for Titone. What happened there, man?
Let's start with game 3, because game 3 is a little bit easier. Game 3, it has everything to do with just trying to set up pushes. And so, you know, you can't really do that when your opponent recognizes that. He goes in with an MK at the bridge, the Mighty Miner wasn't placed correctly, and then he's able to pressure. Game 2, I don't know. He tried going in on offense and defending, and apparently that wasn't a viable answer.
Well, maybe Rich has some answers for us. Let's bring back the guy, Rich Slaton. Rich, very interesting. It was a best of 3 that went the distance to 3 games, even though it took about as long as a 2-0. Any thoughts on what we just saw there?
Sometimes the hits come hard, right? Sometimes you buy tickets to the pay-per-view and you get a full 12-round slobber knocker,
right.
And every once in a while someone gets knocked out in 30 seconds and you go, well, did I get my money's worth or did I not get my money's worth? I'm not entirely sure. Either way, that's how the game gets played. So a very, very quick run through, and we have one more person moving on to our next weekend.
Yeah, I mean, you look in that first group, Ender was able to take down Betfist, Surgical Goblin took down Diego94, line over Titone, and it was Gabo 2.0, who was able to take down Pram. And, I mean, basically that means as we look through here, I think we have almost every single competitor locked in. It looks like Humble, Keef, and Francito still need to play, so that's one that's still up in the air. And, Yuya and Viper, Boss and Nicoko. So those are actually 3 of the matchups that we had all kind of picked as fun ones to look on broadcast, and all of them taking their sweet time. Yeah, very curious to see who comes out and who's eliminated in all 3 of those sets.
Well, Francito versus Keef is certainly an exciting one. Of course, both guys making World Finals last time around, and both guys can't make it this time. Josh, thoughts? I think you might have picked Fram earlier. Did I remember that one correctly? We went through a whole lot of picks.
Yes, I did side with Yuya on that one, and there was no real thought process behind it. It was solely just a gut feeling that it just wouldn't work out for Viper.
Well, let's go ahead and, let's let Josh go here for a second. We're going to go and jump into our next matchup here in just moments, Andrew. Chief Keef and Viper. Or not Chief Keef, but Chief Keef and Francito. Man, it's going to be a tight one. And again, as a reminder, everyone, if you're just tuning in, just joining us right now, we're at the very end of today's show. So every single match you see right now is a win or you're out of the tournament matchup.
Yeah, and you love to be in that top 32, getting that cash prize, guaranteed few $1,000, guaranteed appearance next weekend. And if you don't, you are in trouble. And Humble Keef takes that Golden Knight dash here early on. Francito top of your screen. Looks like we could be seeing a form of mirror. Might be the cannon cart instead of the giant skeleton, but they could still be both going drill. We'll find out soon.
And look at that. It's the Executioner variation, so we'll see what Francito maybe is what he was thinking about from matchup-wise, or if he's looking to play the Magic Archer somewhere else.
Yeah, and we'll see what version Keef wants to go with. He could also be going to Executioner. Again, I get it. I understand that more people have been playing it. I know Exy got that buff, but we've seen how successful that Magic Archer is in numerous matchups today. And the drill kind of a shockingly relevant, or no, let's say this. It's been prevalent, but not really relevant in terms of the drill being dominant in these games. It's really been all about those support cards around it.
Dark Prince in on the left-hand side does get picked up by the bar barrel. It does not tap at all, so well timed there by Keef as the cannon cart getting nice and close. Golden Knight picks up there right next to the bridge as we have gotten 1 minute 40 seconds in. And so far, no significant damage either way. Pretty even on both sides of the board.
Yeah, and that was a really unique push there from Keef, just going with his Golden Knight at the bridge that had stayed alive, and then following it with a Giant Skeleton. I don't really understand, but I guess maybe that's it right there. Giant Skeleton stays alive just long enough to get the NATO out of Francito, so ends up being a nice play by Keef.
He whizzed to the left-hand side. This is going to be a slow one. I don't expect to see anyone taking big chunks early unless there's a major mistake. And just like last time, both these guys have the defensive tools to really shut down a lot of that drill play. And both guys are in an Executioner. So very curious to see if this is the move right here. And that's what we were looking for previously, was that NATO Golden Knight gameplay. I'm curious to see how much that ends up being the deciding factor in this one.
I mean, that's what this matchup is all about. It's like once you get close to double Elixir, I mean, basically for the first 3 minutes of gameplay, you're just like, all right, are you going to do something dumb enough to allow me to get damage in? And then when you get in double and triple Elixir, that's when you can start to make your opponents really make mistakes. And already Keef, just before we even get there, he gets that NATO connection with the Golden Knight. Already, I mean, you got to be the aggressor also in this mirror matchup. You have to be the one that's looking for those NATO lineups with whether the Executioner, the Magic Archer if you're running that version, or of course the Golden Knight, or something like this. Royal Ghost getting tanked for by that Giant Skeleton splashing onto the tower, and just like that, Keef just dominates that game.
That's how it happens. Nice, easy, quick Keef taking game number 1. And the curious thing here is how much do these deck sets continue to mirror each other as we go on, right? You did see the Ghost versus the Dark Prince as the opposite choices here, but interesting to see these guys both start out the same way. Do they go in divergent paths? And you can see already still in sort of the same lane for the moment.
Yeah, Fire Spirit's out right away. Looks like we could be seeing Bait versus maybe Royal Hogs or Hog AQ Cycle. And we'll see which version Keef decides to go with, as Bait has become more and more popular as of late. I'm not mad about it, even though I don't really love playing this version of Bait or playing against it. I don't mind watching it.
All right, Hog in, and Mighty Miner does its work. Not that far into it, but we've seen a fairly quick pace here thus far, as you might expect.
Yeah, and, you know, Keef has a lot of great responses to deal with this Bait deck. I mean, especially if he has Log in there as well. The delivery is great, and then you have the combo of the Skellies versus the Fire Spirit to clean up barrels. So you can always use the Skelly Fire Spirit or the Log or what have you on barrel number 1, or even take a little bit of damage. And then if you have to worry about a second barrel coming in, whether it's due to Quick Cycle or Mirror, you've always got another response.
Well, that's the big question, right? Assuming that he is playing Log here, which he didn't play Log on defense against that last Goblin barrel. Assuming that Keef is playing Log in this matchup, how much does he get into rhythm of saving the Log for the Dart Goblin and trying to get some chip damage and then timing that delivery? Yet you don't have to be predicting it, but you have to be kind of hovering a bit, or at least very fast finger to play that delivery against the Goblin barrel.
And the best thing for Keef is he can do that, or he can just switch it up, right? And he can go delivery on top of the Dark Goblin plus Mighty Miner and then Log low. And finding himself in a pretty good matchup right now is Keef, even though he does find himself at the damage deficit.
I don't think he's playing Log. I mean, it
feels like he's not.
Right? Now that you see the Valkyrie, I mean, I guess he could still be playing Log. I mean, it's weird for this deck not to have Log in it. I think we'll kind of find out here in about the next 7 seconds
it might
if
be
he has
Cannon
Log or not.
Instead, and then he's just got the delivery and the Fire Spirit. Yeah,
I think you're right.
So he takes
very interesting.
A lot of damage there on that right-hand side, and you still have a lot of responses. Like, you still have a lot of ways to stop those barrels, and it feels like Keef is just playing a little too lax in terms of his defense.
Well, I mean, stopping those barrels with the delivery is much harder. You have to have it queued up and ready to rock. You see a nice sequence there to go Valk to the front and Fire Spirit low. And he's trying to create counter pressure by playing troop counters to the barrels as opposed to playing the delivery to the barrels. But it's a risky feature. It's a risky way to play against a Bait deck. And and he's going to take some damage here and there, and now he's into that range where this is log, rocket, GG, well played.
Yeah, it's over. I mean, that first rocket comes down. You know how quickly this deck cycles around. He's just got to play a little bit of defense, and now that rocket is back in cycle. It does enough damage. We're going to game number 3, and humble Keef, Chief Keef, whatever you want to call him, just struggling to keep up with the barrels here in this game number 2, and that's why, again, that deck is so popular, so strong right now. And if you look at the spells used by Francito, Log, Rocket, NATO, and Barb Barrel, he's still got a lot of options out there.
Yes, and keep in mind, Fram has not used Archer Queen or Skeleton King yet, so 2 very different looks that Chief Keef has to kind of think about as he makes his deck selection here for game number 3. And an aggressive Dart Goblin gets a chip damage, and Fram does not get the pickup with that giant skeleton.
Yeah, frustrating. You always hate when that happens. -3 trade has to come out. You're a second late, so you've overspent. You've taken damage. Now your troop card that could double as a champion is out of cycle. Luckily, he does get that cannon card out of play as well. Keef maybe going to Mortar. We'll see.
Miner to pick up the Royal Ghost. And this is a very swarmy deck. We've seen similar matchups here. This is a very swarmy deck to be up against the double Mother Witch. Yeah, the Mother Witch mirror deck.
And 100%, there's also, this deck that Keef is running, sometimes you'll have the Minion Horde instead of the Bats, and luckily for him, he doesn't have it because I think it's all bad. I mean, really, this is not great for Keef because he has to be so on top of that first Mother Witch, usually with his Miner, and then deal with the second one, hopefully with some spell power, but that's just a lot to ask out of your opponent, never getting Mother Witch value in this matchup. Keef's going to have to be very, very cautious moving forward.
Yeah, this is going to be very curious to see how he finds a way on tower. Might get a connection here with the mortar. That's going to be a couple of shots. So, no joke connection there gives Keef a nice little lead as we go past the midway point of regulation time, 22:58 versus the 29:46.
Keef just decides to respond to that Royal Ghost with his Skeleton King. Obviously no skellies on the board, but you have to think about holding that cannon cart for the giant skeleton. Playing against this deck is so frustrating because there's just so many things you have to keep in mind, and a nice little breath of relief can come out from Keef. The second that Fisherman comes down, you know that you have one full cycle of being able to play your Bats and Skarmy a little bit more freely.
And just not getting the Mother Witch in the mix here.
Yeah. This
is practically tower down. Frankly, I'm fairly surprised about how little of a factor the Mother Witch has been in this matchup.
Well, that's the mistake, Rich. I mean, 100%. You're 100% right. That Mother Witch needs to be used as the win condition in this matchup. If you haven't played Hogs anyway, you need to have the Mother Witch as your win condition when you have so many units on your opponent's side of it that you'll get value out of. So if they're going to fireball that first Mother Witch, you've got to mirror the second one instead of playing the Fisherman there. Still going to get some good damage in, but it feels like it's way too little, way too late.
And going high and low with the defense here. Mortar down defensively for Keef. And, yeah, again, Mother Witch not able to turn those into anything. And, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. The Mirrored Fishermen just don't make a whole lot of sense. The only thing that Fram can hold on to is if he's able to catch these miners, yeah, there you go. He gets one more cycle of life around because that Fireball does not do enough.
Fireball can win if he can get around quickly enough. I don't think enough damage comes in this direction. Piggy's on the tower. Mirrored arrows, but there's nothing behind that, and that's going
Mother
to be...
Witch? Yeah, I mean, there it is, and the Mother Witch comes down a second late, and Keef even predicts it, which is a really nice prediction, but, that's what Fram needed to do for the last 3.5 minutes, was he needed to make that Mother Witch a factor, and he could just not do it.
And there you have it. Keef staying alive here in the World Finals hunt. So making his way back, finished top 32, made it to Worlds last year. Going to be making the return at least to our next stage. Of course, only 10 of our remaining 32 that we have will be moving on. Or actually, I think it's 8 of the 32,
Yeah,
and then there's 2 more from the LCQ. So
yeah.
It's going to be a very interesting couple of weeks here. But for the moment, it is Keef moving on, staying in the hunt, getting a piece of that prize pool.
Yeah, I mean, from 128 down to 32, you're going to lose some big names along the way, and some big shockers that we lost today. Wallace not making it through, Codigo, Hajime. There's so many of these guys that were able to put it together for so long, and they're just not going to be able to make it on through. And what's crazy is that it feels like for as long as their day was, and for getting their run cut short, on the other side of it, the other 16 that immediately made it through from our upper bracket, it felt like their day went by like that. AC, we're bringing you back. Any thoughts on what we just saw there between Francito and Keef? What was with the Mother Witch, right, in that last game?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's only one thought racing through my brain, and it's, why are we not seeing more Mother Witch? I mean, it should be spammed, Mother Witch upon Mother Witch, upon 3 cycle cards, upon Mother Witch. That's how you play that deck. That's what it is. You defend, and you try and have some crazy offense. It was shocking to me as well. I was biting my nails just hoping that it was going to happen, and it didn't. It just really didn't make any sense.
Well, that's, knowing the matchup and how to play it correctly is one of those challenges. And, of course, moving into dual mode from being a ladder player, you have to have a lot of versatility, and maybe you don't always get it down in time for a matchup. But speaking of matchups, we do have our next one coming, and another elimination matchup here between last year's number 4 finisher in the regular season, the Frenchman Viper, looking for that final shot to stay alive here against Yuya. So this will be a whole lot of fun one, and I believe that Andrew and I picked Viper, and that Josh picked Yuya going into this one. Is that right?
And I would like to say AirSurfer also chose Viper. So it is 3-1 instead of, any 3-0 or anything like that.
I mean, you look at Viper's run that he's had over the last couple of years, and it's definitely a lot more heavy in the top finishes than Yuya. We saw Yuya show up in round 1 of 2021 in the Clash Royale League, monthly finals, and he got 4th place there, and I was like, okay, Yuya's showing up. But as the year went on, it felt like we kept seeing less and less of him, and his finishes weren't quite as substantial, whereas it felt like Viper was trending in the other direction. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, they're both great players, but again, it's hard for me to bet against Viper. I feel like he's been more active and more consistent all year long, but I can't ignore what you said, AC, and I think it's very true. It's just, for some reason, Viper's luck just isn't quite there. So here we go. I'm gonna say goodbye. You guys are gonna hop into the game. Have fun.
We will. Let's jump right into it. And Josh, correct me if I'm wrong here as we go in. I think I remember Yuya being a Golem player originally. Any chance we see him pull it out here today?
That would be absolutely wonderful. And yeah, I feel like I remember that, and I feel like it was like actually, now that I say a different form of Golem, I think he was like the only player running it on top ladder as well. But yeah, I want to say it was kind of a weird version of Golem as well, and he just kind of made it work. And I completely forgot about that, and it's one of the many reasons why I like him as a player, because I'm a huge fan of Golem. I'm a huge fan of Three Musketeers. Those weird decks that nobody still believes in are the ones that I want to continue to succeed.
And Viper playing a very fast cycle version of Drill Golden Knight with Exi. And you see there, what would it be if Viper were not playing a Rocket Cycle deck and cycles Rocket early? But look at that. Yuya immediately drops that Archer Queen.
Yeah, right there. Ice Spirit on top of Ice Spirit. The Earthquake will allow for something to happen, but this is going to be a beautiful Executioner lineup. Exi will be able to take out the Archer Queen, and we will see another Rocket. It is not... I mean, I can basically say with 2 minutes left in this game that Viper has this wrapped up. And it's weird to say with both players at 2k HP, but okay, I was going to say I don't see him making any mistakes ever, and right there, the tower's down to 1,002 HP. Wow.
Yeah, that NATO ended up being body blocked by his own Exi, so a whole lot of complications there. And just like that, what looked like was going to be and I see what you were talking about, right? If Viper's cycling Rocket that early, he kind of knows that that's the route to victory. But yeah, pretty big error there, and just like that, the lead switches heavily to Yuya. And this Hog Rider is going to get pulled to King Tower finally for the activation, but still having to overspend a little bit as the XE comes down here for Viper.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, he now needs to make a push. It's no longer Rocket cycling. It's got to be Drill plus Rocket plus possible NATO Golden Knight. There's no simple answer at this point. We do see the dash, and that is going to be a great attempt, but an even better play from Yuya. He is going to defend properly, no NATO in cycles, so this Hog will get to the tower if nothing else comes down.
And there you go, second Hog behind, putting the pressure on right now. NATO should be there. NATO does pull. Golden Knight trying to do its work up high. 30 seconds left. Guards in. Snowball to slow and try to get guards on tower, and they do touch a bit. Hog Rider in, bomb tower high. Ice Spirit trying to help here. EQ doing its job, but Valk plus guards shut that down, and now it's just cycle it back and spell this bad boy out for Yuya. And very nice performance here. Viper opened the door, and Yuya stepped right on through. GG, well played. Game number 1.
Yeah, and it's just shocking how it always happens to Viper. That one is due to his own mistake, though. It wasn't due to anything but, not recognizing that it was going to get blocked. I think the Hog also got blocked by, I think it was the bomb from the bomb tower. And so, yeah, just a huge, massive mistake from Viper in game number 1. And Yuya, I mean, that is a bad matchup. That is a 2080 matchup kind of matchup right there. And he was just able to win when it really mattered most.
And talking about Yuya, 8.7K personal best, nearly 8.9, 87.88 his best trophies. And you talk about the ability to stay in for a long time. Also, 5-time global tournament #1 finisher. So you put sort of all that stuff together. Best finish on ladder, call it only 14 best finish on ladder, but he's put together some pretty nasty performances overall in those global tournaments.
Yeah, that is an incredible. That is incredible. I had no idea that he was able to pull that off. So certainly props to him. And I guess it's something about the tournament level gameplay that he really shines through.
Royal Giant down. Nice bar barrel to distract the Fisherman for a moment. And now the Fisherman will come in late. Hunter takes care of business first. So passing halfway through the opening 3 minutes, and Yuya does give up a little bit of damage here to Viper.
Giant Skeleton is going to get plopped down onto the arena, takes out all 3 of the troops, and still has 30% health, so it will force out a Giant Skeleton in response from Yuya. As this game goes along, Yuya with a slight lead currently, but a nice, almost mirror match, with the only difference is, let's see, one player has the Ghost and one player has the Mother Witch, and in this, you're always going to want the DPS, and the Ghost is going to be massive in this mirror.
And just as you say that, the Royal Giant of Yuya shreds Viper's right-hand tower, so Josh, just don't say anything that's good for Viper right now. You are an absolute curse.
Yeah. I feel like I feel like this is going to be the one time where like Yuya just has Rocket or something, and he's just going to win the game off that, because of course it just has to happen against Viper.
Lightning trying to get enough room here for the Royal Giant. Royal Giant does get a few good shots in. Giant Skeleton controlled on the right-hand side, but Giant Skeleton's in both lanes right now. Fishboy comes to the middle, so he will not be able to deal with this Royal Giant. This is going to be a whole lot of trouble for Viper right here. No Fisherman. GG. Well played. Yuya with a clean 2-0 moves on and eliminates Viper. One win away from the next stage.
Yeah, a brilliantly played game number 2, and it has everything to do with the deck construction. One player had Log, one player had Bar Barrel, and one player had Mother Witch, and one player had Ghost. And both of the advantageous cards were in Yuya's deck. He played it well. He applied pressure at the bridge. He blocked defensive fishermen from pulling it to the opposite lane. But it has everything to do with those 2 cards being in his deck, and that extra DPS and that extra pushback was enough for him to take the win.
Yep, and there you go. So Yuya moves on. Japan continues to send an amazing contingent every single year to our World Finals, and this year no different. A whole collection, a cavalcade of players, if you will. And let's go ahead and make our collection here of casters a bit bigger. Andrew, come back and join us here on the desk. It really felt like that should have been closer, but you know, we've talked about it a lot. Viper in the big moments. If we haven't talked about being blinded, we talked about being blinded by the lights. It seems like they tend to get in Viper's eyes pretty heavily.
I don't know, man. It just hurts my heart. It really does. He puts in so much work. He plays so well. Like you said, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. He's so good, but he just can't seem to put it together right when he needs to. So Viper not able to continue his run on. You know, congrats to Yuya, congrats to AC for calling that out. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's just tough. You know, like I said, I feel like his deck versatility has gotten a bit better, but that doesn't mean he's as well versed in those decks as he needs to be. Just because he's playing more of them doesn't mean he knows them in and out. And it's just a bit of a bummer, you know, but that's the way that it goes. And, you know, you can't take away too much from Yuya just because Viper fell here and just because he's a fan favorite, a caster favorite. Congrats to Yuya. And we got one more match left. That's it. We have our final matchup of the day, and at least part of it's going to end here in the States. AirSurfer qualified before, and now we have Boss is the other big time guy from the USA, content creator, ex-pro, or yeah, I guess current pro, and he's going up against Nicoko, who is, you know, not quite any of those things, but building a name for himself.
Yeah, that's the one. I've been watching the Twitch chat. There's been questions of what's up with Boss happening for the last half hour, 45 minutes, actually almost the entire day. People keep asking about Boss in the Twitch chat, so don't you worry. We're going to get to see Boss. Will he rise to the occasion right here, or will he fall? I'll leave that up to you two guys. All
right, Rich, we'll check back with you at the end of our show. AC, you and me going into this matchup between Boss and Nicoko. And we'll find out who comes out on top. We're going to hop into this game right now. Nicoko, bottom of your screen. Boss at the top. And a bowler and a tombstone to start. Okay, Boss, I see you.
Yeah, I love that I mean, it has nothing to do with, oh, I think this deck is great, but I just love seeing the bowler in Boss's hands. Somehow, some way, he makes the bowler work, and it's not like he does anything too impressive with it. He just kind of gets a bit of value with it, but even getting a bit of value is still really good, and that is going to be a Loon connection on the right side. Not going to have any elixir for the Musketeer, so both towers are going to be pretty even on the right side.
Yeah, that last shot coming in, bringing it down to 1962, so Boss goes for a bit of min-maxing there, but maybe underestimates his defensive capabilities. Balloon does come through, though, as a bit of saving grace.
So in this matchup, I'm trying to figure out what the last two cards are going to be on Boss's side. It's probably going to be a ground troop like a Valkyrie, and then it's probably going to be a Freeze as well. So
LJ,
it's
maybe?
just, yes, probably going to be the LJ. So it's just going to be really difficult for him to get to tower. But on the flip side, I don't foresee a lot of Hogs making it. I think from now on, he's probably just going to be looking at earthquake damage to finish off this game. At least that's how I would do it in the position that Nicoko is currently in.
Pretty aggressive heads-up freeze there from Boss to just get some damage in. He knew that Musketeer was just far enough away and takes some more damage on the right-hand side. Does get that Hog to King 1593 to 2172.
Yeah, I was shocked to see the freeze as well. I don't know if I agree with it. I don't know if I disagree with it, but it certainly is a play. And if he wins, I'm going to say it was the right one because it struck fear in his opponent's eyes. And this certainly could be it. That Lumberjack got so much damage.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's a really nice send. That Lumberjack getting a lot, getting the rage in, and now the bowler on the right-hand side connects. Inferno is on the tower. Boss doing it. Giving a little bit of a shout out there to Mugi with the Lumberloon freeze. Takes game number 1 here over Nicoko, who, you know, honestly didn't have a lot of great responses. It's just about getting those Musketeers down on the field, and you got to be able to get to a second Musketeer or a second bomb tower. And it's also hard to do that while creating offense, especially when your opponent has Tombstone and NATO. So a great draw there in game 1 for Boss.
Yeah, and I really think that a huge reason as to why he lost game number 1 was that you can't be playing Hogs anymore. I really do believe that trying to go with the Earthquake cycle would have been a better solution, and it would have given him a lot more elixir on defense, and he can set up with, you know, defensive Musketeers. I really think that that there was a different way to play that matchup.
Yeah, I mean, 100% agreed. The way he was doing it just wasn't working out. He needed a little bit more ground presence to deal with the bowlers and the Lumberjacks if they came through. And, of course, like, always making sure those Musketeers are not close enough to get frozen with the Bomb Tower and the Princess Tower, or at least staggering them out enough so that Boss has to pick and choose what to freeze. And doesn't matter, as we're on to game number 2. Boss running a interesting bait deck here with Guards, Barrel, and the Princess Dark Goblin combo. And Nicoko probably doesn't have Log because he has Skarmy, so it could be a frustrating endeavor for him with Valkyrie and Electro Spirit to deal with, and the delivery.
Yeah, and so this is wild. We are not seeing a hero or a champion be used in this bait deck. And I don't know, that's kind of shocking. I feel like whenever you have that ability, whenever you can use the Mighty Miner version, that's what you should be doing. So right here, we're going to see if it works out for Boss. The Princess variations, I feel like we don't see Princess that often, but I love seeing the Princess down on the field. It's something about the Princess where it just kind of takes me back to the good old days, even though we're still living those good old days right now.
Yeah, Morton has actually been running a Princess Mighty Miner cannon bait deck that, like you said, has been one of the few decks that's been running Princess more. That's a really great Barrel plus E-Spirit combo. Protects the Princess here. Skarmy would have stepped up and taken care of it, but you also see the overspend from the Fisherman coming down. So a few mistakes there by Nicoko, and Boss got to be really, really happy about it. He's going to keep the pressure up. You figure, yes, there it is. Barrel comes in right behind that Valkyrie, and no spell or Skarmy to deal with those Goblins.
Yeah, that's, I mean, just brilliant pressure right there. Dark Goblin able to take everything out. Another Princess spammed on top of the floor. And yes, that Dark Goblin does get a little bit of pressure, but he just has every correct answer. But no answer for this Dark Goblin. The tower will lock onto the Dark Goblin instead of the Goblin, so that's good for him. But he still needs to finish off this right-hand tower. We need to see what spell he has on Boss's side.
Nicoko just evening things up right away. A misplaced Valkyrie there from Boss goes behind instead of in front. And he does it again. He goes behind there with the Valkyrie. You got to go to the front just in case something comes down like that Dark Goblin did. And now we see the Skeleton King's ability pop, but a Princess plus a delivery will be good cleanup there. 668 to 1020 in our final matchup of the day. One of these players will move on to be in our top 32. They will be the 32nd player. The other one will be eliminated.
So the Princess will be kept alive because of the protection from the E-Spirits. The Princess at the bridge is kind of a very interesting play because there was really no potential for the Skeleton King to come back all the way. So kind of a huge mistake right there. I don't know if it's going to cost him just because of the huge advantage that he currently has. And honestly, just great defense, but it is going to cost him. 506 to 668. Nicoko now has the lead, and he has a big spell, which Boss has not shown.
Yeah, Boss is having trouble getting these barrels to get on top of tower. He can't just send him in naked because that Skarmy is always there to respond. He needs to either get a Princess up higher or an Electro Spirit down at the bridge, but not having the ability to do it right now. 481 to 548. Now we see Boss switch lanes because the Valkyrie's there to tank, but Skarmy in cycle again and nothing to deal with it. Boss trying to end this game, but he cannot get out of it.
Barrels are now going down on the left side, but the problem with these barrels is that every single time he's responding with the same Skarmy, and so with nothing else in the push, it's just never going to work. It's never reasonable for him to assume that it is going to change. He needs to do something with his pushes.
There we go. Princess up high behind, but Skarmy is there and the Fish Boy on top. And Nicoko now just needs to get this poison down and defend. But that barrel is undefended. Skarmy wasn't there in time. Tower goes down. We're going to game number 3. And if his palms weren't sweating before, you bet Nikoko's are now.
I mean, I just don't know what his last card is. I really have no idea what Boss's last card would be, because any possible spell should have been used. I mean, whether it be you go for the rocket cycle, fireball cycle, poison, the log cycle. I don't care if it's a tornado cycle. You do something to try and finish off the game that way. He continued to use the barrel when his opponent continued to use the Skarmy, and that's truly what cost him in game number 2.
Yeah, I mean, you know it's going to come out as a response, and you know there's no reason for your opponent not to use it if you don't have a response for it. So it was just one of those things where it was like Boss needed to layer that a little bit better, and you saw him try it a couple times, and it worked once with the Princess up high. It didn't work later on. And again, that E-Spirit would have been a great way to at least just inhibit those Skellies a little bit. But either way, that's neither here nor there. We are on to game number 3. Boss takes the brunt of a battle ram, drops that Mighty Miner down late. Skeleton Dragons in tow to 2 untouched towers by Nicoko.
Yeah, this Magic Archer is going to get a lot of value, taking out both of the Skeleton Dragons and the Mighty Miner before it can fully heat up. Even on the left side, it's going to get the tower down to 2492, so a decent chunk of damage. And these Battle Ram decks with the mirror, it just provides so much pressure, but a great give up. I love that he recognized how much elixir Nicoko spent. It's just whether or not he can defend this assault, especially with these E-Barbs coming in tow.
Yeah, E-Barbs are in, Snowball is in, Miner comes out defensively. That's not going to be enough. Boss is eliminated in a minute 40. Nicoko just mows right through him. Boss doing a great job min-maxing there, making sure he's able to get a Lava Hound down on the board. Nicoko goes, no, I've done this song and dance before. E-Barb's in, Snowball in, GG, well played, goodbye. Nicoko stays alive.
He just did not have the DPS. I mean, as soon as I was saying it, I saw the E-Barbs come down and like my heart stopped. I knew what was going to come. I knew the 3 crown was going to appear in front of my eyes, and yeah, I've seen videos for the last 4 years of E-Barbs taking towers, just place them down at the bridge. I don't know what it's called when the crown tower is gone. It's the above bridge.
Yeah.
But yeah, whenever they're placed at the above bridge, you know that 3rd crown is coming down.
Yeah, and Boss eliminated their struggles in game number 2, lead to a quick loss in game number 3. Let's bring back Rich Slaton to end out our show. We have gone through it. We've seen a lot of matches. We've seen a lot of eliminations. And apparently we've seen Skarmies just dominate Goblin barrels. Rich, what are your thoughts on what we just saw, man?
I just want to know what the heck that last, and I'm going to look it up right now because finally that the match is over, we will be able to figure out what that last card was for Boss. I should have had it queued up already, but I was so enthralled watching it. I mean, it has to be. I mean, but it feels like he would have gotten it in the mix, right? It just feels crazy. I was so dialed into that last game that was so nutty, and let's see. This was which Boss deck? Oh no, it has not updated yet. Only his Cap Gun matches up, so we're waiting for it to process. You know what? As soon as we have that last match process, we're gonna find out what that card was. Josh, theories?
I think it has to be canon. It kind of makes sense to throw it in there, and I mean any spell would have been used, so I would have to assume it has to go building.
Yeah, I mean, I think it maybe is Rocket, like you said though, Rich. You would think it would have gotten thrown in the mix a little bit sooner then, but really I think it was just more about, I mean, yeah, because then you could have even seen like Rocket barrels. What is it?
It was Inferno Tower.
Okay.
It was Inferno Tower, so even more reason why he was sitting on it and not getting involved at all, because he was up against spears, Scar Me, Skeleton King. There's just nothing to really even use the Inferno Tower against in that matchup. You understand why, because everything else was anti-swarm with the Valk variation.
Yep.
But man, that was just a dead card in that matchup. And then, of course, we go to game number 3, where Nicoko just blows right through him.
Yeah, it's a tough one there. Boss getting eliminated. There's a lot of fans out there, I'm sure, in the chat that are bummed about him having to hang up his hat for now. And, I liked what he did in game number 1. I love the deck he came out with. He was in a good matchup situation when you have Bull or you have NATO, you have Tombstone. And, of course, even being able to use that freeze early on and then defensively if you need it. But, yeah, game 3. A tough one there, and it sounds like we do have a bracket check-in here. We have our 32 players decided, and as you guys can see, the 16 from the top, the 16 from the bottom, they had to work through a lot of rounds in that lower bracket, and then up in the top, people like Morton, people like Surgical Goblin, they only had to play 2 sets with that first round bye, and that gets us to the 32 for next weekend.
Yeah, and that 32, let's just blow through some names here real quick. From Group 1, Trainer Toby, Morton, Pedro, Pandora, Ender, Surgical Goblin, Line, and Gabo. And just some notes here on the Swiss bracket style we'll be doing next weekend for Stage 4. Kind of a crazy route that you get here for Stage 4 next weekend.
Yeah, got to go 3-0 if you want to qualify, but there's obviously ways to still do it otherwise. A lot of players, as you can see, 32 right there on the left-hand side, and they work all the way down to that at the end. And we are going to be here every single week. I know that not a lot of broadcasts have been on the official Clash Royale League or the Esports channel here for CR, but all the rest of them will be. World Finals will be here, so make sure you have those notifications on. Make sure you are subscribed. Go follow esports.clashroyale.com. Their website has all the information you need. Go follow Esports Royale EN on Twitter, and the Tournament Hub. It's at everyone's disposal. Everyone can check in. You can look at the brackets throughout the day. You can look at how your favorite players are doing. So go and make sure you guys are using that Tournament Hub. Great day of action today, guys.
Absolutely. Josh, any final thoughts on what we've seen today in this bloodbath from 128 down to 32?
Well, I will say I am extremely happy I got to go first because blanket statement, super, unfortunate for the people that I was rooting for, the ones that got knocked out. There's always next year, but everybody wants to do it this year. Congratulations to those who won, and a special congratulations to Surgical. I'm going to steal Surgical. It is awesome to see him competing again. It is awesome to see him advancing to the next stage. And while surprising, it was a gut feeling. As soon as I saw him enter the tournament, I was thinking, I think he has a chance.
Andrew, any favorites besides the defending or former world champion?
It's really hard to say. There's so many good players that did make it on through, and there's also a handful that I really hope are hanging on. I know that Josh said Surgical. I am really happy for him, but I'm also really happy for people like IMJP and AirSurfer, people that feel like they've been a little bit under-celebrated for a while. Even when JP won that world championship with Queso, so many people talked about it. Was Ruben there? Ruben's no longer there, and now JP gets to flex his stuff. And of course, AirSurfer. Known him for a long time. Great dude, hardworking guy. Great to see that hard work pay off here today.
6 World Finals tickets already punched earlier this year. 10 more spots to fill out. And, of course, we'll take one step closer next week right here. We'll see you back for Andrew, Ghai, Joshua, AC, Sharon, and everybody here at Clash Royale League. I'm Rich Slaton. We'll see you here next weekend.